And we is live. Damn, I didn't know Smash was going right now. If I'd known that, I probably wouldn't have gone live. But here we is anyway. Well, he started 1 hour ago, so he might be chilling out in a little bit. Give it a minute or two, see who shows. Make sure all my stuff's kicking. And it looks like something happened with Rumble. Or is that the... No, that's the wrong one, I think. Here it is. All right, I'll make sure I'm live over there. So what is up, perps? Hey, it even gave me an alert on my Rumble channel that I went live. Cool. So welcome to the stream, kids. I did not plan on going live tonight, but I got a few things I want to do before I crash. So, and while I'm doing that, we might as well listen to a congressional hearing. But while we're here, we might as well.
Hey, boys, look what I got here.
Hey, where are the white women at?
So yeah, this is the Share the Pain stream, not Share the Pain stream. So the other day while we were covering all this stuff on gun control and all this shit, there was a hearing on Biden's attempt to basically shut down anybody that disagrees with his administration, which is awful nice of him. So we're going to watch that. What I am doing, I'll show you guys. Let me do a screen share. We'll share a tab. So, Alabama has decided to try to pass some gun bills. Is that a new one? I think that actually is a new one. I'll have to try to add some of this to my list. So just to give you guys a little bit of a heads up, we have one that would turn, let me make myself a little bit. So one of the bills would make it to where if I'm pulled over by an officer, stopped by an officer, whatever, and I don't inform them that I am carrying, that could turn into I think that one's a Class C felony. Awful nice. No, that one's a Class A misdemeanor, which would make me a prohibited person since the punishment is up to a year in prison and like a $6,000 fine. Let me look back at some of my notes real quick. And that was Chris England, which is awful nice of him. So Chris England also introduced HB 28, which right now, as someone who was permitted to carry, if I go to pick my daughter up that's from school and I'm carrying, which I do constantly because I'm always carrying, perfectly fine. I pretty much think as long as I don't enter a school building, and that's a school deal, not necessarily like a federal or state deal, as long as I don't enter the school building, then I'm fine. This jackass wants to take away that protection and make it to where if I went on to school grounds just to pick my daughter up and I had my gun on me, that's a Class C felony, which would definitely make me a prohibited possessor and put my little happy ass in jail. I've tried that. I don't like it. It wasn't any fun. Just so you guys know, take it from Coop. Jail's no fun. Prison's no fun. Then we have one bill that I guess would make it extra illegal for illegal aliens to carry, to just be in possession of a firearm, which, believe it or not, I think is horseshit. If you're here illegally, if you're going to get arrested, I think it should be on the illegality of your entry. If you are here illegally and you have a firearm for self-defense, I don't see any issue with it, because I don't think your right to self-defense is dependent on a visa or whatever. If you're going to get removed because you're illegal. Don't take away someone's human right to self-defense. And then we got HB 123, which is a safe storage bill. And then SB 126, which has a companion bill in the House for, guess what, red flag laws. So they're going after federal money is what they're doing. So I'll show you guys another thing. Screen share. Will it let me? Let's see, window. I'm gonna have to share an entire screen. So is it not going to let me show it? Well, if it's showing an entire screen, let me see. Let me do this. Let me make myself small, and maybe this will show. So let me do something. Shit, that's not what I want to do. Okay, so now you guys should be able to see this. So I am starting my letter to my senator and my representative about these bills. And I'm going to basically itemize each one, and then I'm going to go through and say why each one is pretty much unconstitutional and will only harm innocent people like myself. Because why in the hell should it be a felony for me to just go pick my daughter up and have my concealed gun on me? This bill is so damn stupid that if you got pulled over in a school zone, you could be charged with a felony if you have a gun on you. And see, that was part of the reason in 1995 that the federal prohibition of firearms on school grounds got shot the fuck down, the Safe Schools Act. That got shut down in 95 in a case, I know I scribbled it somewhere. It was U.S. versus Lopez. And it basically said, no, federal government, you can't fucking do that. If schools want to make policies to where you can't enter their buildings with firearms, that's one thing. That is a school policy, much like, it would be trespassing or something like that. It said the fucking state and the federal government can't go in and do that. So that's part of what I'm working on. I started at some last night, and I'm just going through. It'll probably, depending. Sometimes I can knock something out like this in just a couple hours. Sometimes it might take me a day or so to really get everything formatted like I want, hit all the points that I want coherently, because believe it or not, I can actually write very well. I don't think on a written paper I've ever scored anything under a 90. And one of those gigs was it was on a APA paper when I was doing some classes and had some medical stuff going on. And the instructor knocked off 10% of the paper because I had one formatting issue that really wasn't even that far outside of what the format should have been. And he basically told me, look, I had to gig you on something. That was his reasoning for it, which I just kind of took that one and said, okay, I got like a 99 in your class anyway. If you gig me 10 points on something that ain't hurt my fucking feelings, which I could have argued with. I should have argued with it. But anyway, so we're going to watch this hearing. Well, I'm going to listen to it, probably stop it and say some shit. But while I'm doing that, I'm going to work on kind of getting some more parts and pieces of this letter together. Now, I did call both of my illustrious, or my senator and my representative the other day and left messages with them. I will call them again tomorrow. Now, tomorrow at 10 a.m., let me pull something up. We are going to be covering another hearing. Let me see whether I can pull it up real quick. Oh, that's not what I want. Not what I wanted to do. Let's see. And I actually got a couple hearings to cover this week, which is kind of cool. I'm off this week, and I really didn't want to do that, but since these hearings are coming up, I'm going to cover them. So I tell you what, let me do another screen share, and I'll show you guys what's going on. So, House Judiciary Committee is holding a couple hearings this week. One on the weaponization of the federal government. That's on 9:30. A hearing on compliance with committee oversight. This is another hearing that's going to deal with the ATF and the FBI. And the other one is a markup. Let me see something. Let me go to the House Judiciary's page. Let's go lives. All right, this one. This is an important one. This markup, and this is tomorrow morning at 10. Yep, tomorrow morning at 10. So this has to do with the pistol brace ruling. And this is the House Judiciary Committee trying to put their power as an oversight committee to basically tell the ATF, you can get fucked, you can't do this. So this, and it's the Congressional Oversight Act. I think unless they get so many members on this will have to go to the president. I'm not sure. I got to check on that. But if it goes in front of the president, it's going to get shot down. But it will be interesting watching the markup on this and watching Democrats' heads explode because someone's actually trying to rein in the power of a federal agency, and they don't like people reigning in power. So, goody. So let's do the free speech here.
Education.
And let's rock and
as
roll.
these politically motivated stunts take effect, they shortchange our children and
Good
silence
Lord, the
parents
chat
who want
just
their
blew
children to be
up.
fully educated on these subjects.
Here, before we do this,
Extremist politicians are more interested in abusing their power to bring divisive culture wars into our kids.
Before we do this, let me do this. Let me make myself bigger. It's like Alice in Wonderland. One cake makes you big, one cake makes you small, all that shit. And let's roll through. Sunflowers, what's happening, sister? Mike McClune, my brother, what is happening? Soldier Girl, what's up, sis? Hopefully you're having a good night. Taco Syndicate, sister, what's happening? The goddamn bacon. What's up, my brother? Taco Bacon Mike. Did I miss anybody? If I missed you and didn't say hi, throw something in the chat so I can get to you, because I dearly love all of you perps, and I want to say hi to all y'all. I probably threw a link in the chat, but I'm trying to kind of do something in the background while I'm listening to this. So let's make me smalls again. Biggest smalls. I'm such a fucking retard some nights, I swear to God.
Kids' classrooms and our neighborhood schools than they are in proposing solutions to actually help students and parents. If we're concerned about chilling free speech, we should be concerned that the conservative attacks on free speech have caused those who write and publish books to be censored themselves. According to the New York Times, one textbook publisher has gone so far as to remove all mentions of race in the description of Rosa Parks' experience in order to gain approval to disseminate those books.
These motherfuckers can lie.
There's a huge difference between attempts to suppress free speech based on content, as we've been seeing in recent years, and addressing speech that may be criminal because it threatens violence, which we have seen directed toward educators and school board members across the country. Our Republican colleagues have tried to frame these potentially criminal acts to intimidate school board officials as examples of protected free speech by carrying in involved parents. They are not. Any reasonable person can see the difference between threats of political violence and legitimate political discourse. Unfortunately, this hearing is based upon that false narrative, or alternative facts, if you prefer to call it that, designed to promote chaos and division in our communities. Over the past few years, partisan divides have grown and bad actors have exploited those divisions for political gain. And in the process, we've seen teachers, school officials, school board members, and their families subjected to threats and violence that were unimaginable just a few years ago. I know this from personal experience. All three of my children received public education, and I served for a decade as a school board member, including as president of my local school board, just as my father and sister before me had. During that time, I had endless conversations with involved parents and constituents in grocery stores, at school concerts, on soccer fields, and at formal school board meetings about how our schools could best serve our children and our taxpayers. Sometimes those discussions were emotional, passionate, heated, and people didn't always agree, but everyone always respected our democratic process and the boundaries of civility and protected speech as we sought to reach the best possible solutions for our community. Not once in that decade did I ever witness threats to the personal safety of board members, educators, or their families. But in recent years, we've seen the weaponization of school board comment periods as partisan operatives, fueled with dark money, sought to create chaos in our communities to promote their own political ambitions. Near my district in southeastern PA, school board members received threats of evoking gas chambers and acts of physical violence. Other school boards had to suspend meetings and call the police when brawls erupted. In school districts across the country, school board members and their families were threatened with death and physical violence based on the positions they took in school board meetings. This kind of political violence is not normal. It is un-American. And it must be remembered that these attacks were happening against the backdrop of rising political violence across the country, in part stoked by these extremist right-wing conspiracy theories that have endangered public officials, from election workers to teachers to lawmakers to law enforcement in this very building. When school authorities sought help from law enforcement to address this terrifying trend of threats against them and the people they serve, the Justice Department made it clear in its memorandum on the subject that it was concerned not with the constitutional right to engage, as Merrick Garland said, to engage in spirited debate about policy matters, end quote, but was concerned with criminal conduct, specifically threats that are not protected by the First Amendment. The Supreme Court established long ago that the First Amendment does not protect threats and incitements to violence or intimidation. So when some parents allege that their free speech rights had been impeded by the Department of Justice's memo outlining its limited investigation of unprotected speech and potential criminal conduct, federal court dismissed that case and held that the violence was not constitutionally protected free speech. These are deeply troubling developments. I hope we can hear from our witnesses today about the true dangers to First Amendment freedoms in our country, of teachers being censored and books being banned in ways that are dangerous to our children's education, to our democracy, and to our social fabric, instead of hearing more about fake culture wars that are stoked by political actors. I thank all of our witnesses for participating in today's hearing, and I look forward to a fair, balanced, and substantive discussion of these issues.
Thank the gentlelady. The chairman of the full committee, Mr. Jordan, is present, but I think he is waiving his opening statement in the interest of time. Thank you, Mr. Jordan. I
Chambers
now recognize
Fence,
the
what's
ranking
up,
member of the
brother
full
man?
committee, Mr. Nadler, for his opening statement, if he has one.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would also like to thank the
Polster,
gentlewoman
what's
from
happening,
Pennsylvania, Ms. Scanlon, and to congratulate her on becoming ranking member of the subcommittee, the first woman to do so, in a position I also held for many years. Mr. Chairman, our First Amendment protections are precious. There's a reason the framers enshrined the freedoms of religion, speech, the press, and the right to peaceably assemble and petition the government for redress as the First Amendment to the Constitution. These rights limit government's power over our individual lives, thereby helping enable us to effectively participate in democratic self-government. And restrictions on these freedoms is certainly a topic worthy of examination in this subcommittee. It's unfortunate, therefore, that the new Republican majority would waste an opportunity for a serious discussion of this issue and is instead using the first hearing of this Congress to advance a spurious assertion that the Biden administration and the FBI are somehow chilling parents' free speech rights. There is scant evidence to back up the bogus claim of a wide-ranging federal government conspiracy to quell opposition to COVID-19 policies or so-called woke indoctrination by targeting parents who protested at school boards, as well as our colleagues across the aisle, would have us believe. The Republican majority has wasted untold taxpayer dollars in a failed attempt to corroborate an elaborate conservative persecution fantasy built atop just two documents. A single September 2021 letter sent by the National School Boards Association, or NSBA, to President Biden requesting federal assistance in the face of real and credible threats of violence at school board meetings, and a brief one-page memo issued by Attorney General Merrick Garland simply directing the FBI and federal prosecutors to hold meetings with local law enforcement partners to discuss criminal threats against school personnel. Notably, neither the NSBA letter nor the Attorney General's memo mentioned the word parent, and the Attorney General's memo did not use the term domestic terrorism. No amount of hysteria that we will hear from on the other side today will change those two facts. Instead, this false Republican narrative, unsupported by the evidence, appears to have originated in messaging guidance designed by a documentary filmmaker associated with the Manhattan Institute, a conservative think tank. The majority has also relied on so-called whistleblower testimony to reinforce this manufactured narrative, pointing to the FBI's use of, quote, threat tags as an investigated potential criminal conduct. In fact, the use of such threat tags is nothing nefarious. According to the FBI, it simply uses these tags to track information and to spot trends, but it does not necessarily signal a full investigation. Here, the tag was used to track threats directed against school officials, not parents who attended school board meetings, as has been claimed by the majority. Moreover, as the Republicans' own recent interim staff report acknowledges, the FBI has indicated that none of the school board-related investigations have resulted in federal arrests or charges. The majority would have the public believe that this all adds up to some murky, nefarious conspiracy orchestrated by the Biden administration to chill parents' free speech rights. But there is a simpler explanation. The DOJ is doing its job. We are living during an epidemic of gun violence and mass shootings. Sadly, workplaces, grocery stores, places of worship, and perhaps worst of all, schools have been targets. and political violence of all stripes has become an increasingly common occurrence. Those of us who were in this House on January 6th know that all too well. In this environment, it is both reasonable and legal for the Department of Justice to ensure that state and local law enforcement have the resources they need to protect American citizens from violence and threats of violence. Of course, the First Amendment protects the right to protest vigorously, even with offensive or acerbic language. But the Supreme Court has also recognized that the First Amendment does not protect speech that is an incitement to imminent violence, a true threat of violence, or other criminal conduct. When a parent or any other person crosses the line from mere protest to credible threats of violence at school board meetings, this unprotected conduct undermines free speech values by intimidating other parents into silence. The DOJ memo explicitly acknowledged this very point, a fact my Republican colleagues always seem to ignore. Indeed, when a group of parents filed a lawsuit alleging a First Amendment violation based on the Department of Justice memo, a Trump-appointed district court judge dismissed the case, concluding that the memo did not target First Amendment protected activities, but rather it targeted unprotected criminal conduct. Bogus conspiracy theories aside, Americans are, in fact, currently facing a very real threat to their First Amendment rights in the education context. That threat, however, is coming from state and local governments. Republican-controlled state governments across the country have enacted or proposed book bans and restrictions on training and curriculum. Undoubtedly, my Republican colleagues will cherry-pick out-of-context examples to justify this wave of legislation and other censorship measures, arguing that they are meant to protect children from age-inappropriate material or, quote, divisive concepts. But these extreme yet often vague legislative mandates are ultimately targeted at particular groups, and they invariably focus on books by Black and LGBTQ authors and on the teaching of American history that includes an honest examination of race and bigotry. Let me be clear. This state-mandated censorship does not protect students. Instead, these legislative efforts will likely harm students, teachers, and the quality of public education. We do not serve the interests of students when we shield them from the truth, as uncomfortable as the truth may be at times. Moreover, such ham-handed censorship statutes can lead to absurd results. For example, a Texas school administrator had to apologize after she advised faculty members to teach, quote, opposing perspectives, unquote, about the Holocaust in order to comply with a state law aimed at curbing the discussion of critical race theory in the classroom. An inclusive education is important for all children because it prepares students for participating in civic life in a pluralistic democracy. This state-imposed censorship will not protect our children or improve their education. To the contrary, it will harm them by promoting ignorance. Rather than chasing conspiracy theories and invented scandals that advance a false narrative, we have plenty of true threats to free speech that we could examine. That would be a much better use of the subcommittee's valuable time and resources. I hope that we will chart a different course going forward. And with that, I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank the gentleman. Without objection, all other opening statements will be included in the record. And we will now introduce today's witnesses. Ms. Nicole Neely is the president and founder of Parents Defending Education, a national membership organization that provides parents with resources and support to advocate for their children's education. Parents Defending Education also advocates for and informs children and parents through investigative reporting and litigation and engagement with relevant local, state, and national educational bodies. Mr. Tyson Langhofer is a senior counsel and director for the Center for Academic Freedom at the Alliance Defending Freedom. Mr. Langhofer represents students and faculty at the public high school and college level in defending their First Amendment freedoms. ADF is the world's largest organization committed to protecting free speech, religious freedom, and parental rights. Ms. Tiffany Justice is a co-founder of Tech Policy, Privacy, and Educational Censorship. We welcome our witnesses and thank you all for appearing today. We will begin by swearing you in. If you wouldn't mind, please rise and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you are about to give is true and correct to the best of your knowledge, information, and belief, so help you God? Thank you. Let the record reflect that the witnesses have answered in the affirmative. Please know that your written testimony will be entered into the record in its entirety. Accordingly, we ask you to summarize your testimony in 5 minutes. The microphone in front of you has a clock and a series of lights, and when the light turns yellow, you should begin to conclude your remarks. When the light turns red, your time has expired. Ms. Neely, we'll begin with you, and you can start now. Push that button, and we can hear your voice. Thank you. Is that button lit up there? You got to put, there you go.
Oh, it was green. But
There you
okay.
go.
Try this.
Chairman Jordan, Chairman Johnson, Ranking Members Scanlon and Nadler, and distinguished members of the subcommittee, thank you for inviting me today. My name is Nicole Neely, and I am the president and founder of Parents Defending Education. I am also the executive director of PDE Action and founded the campus free speech organization Speech First, so this hearing topic is one that is near to my heart. On September 29th, 2021, the president of the National School Boards Association sent a letter to President Biden requesting federal intervention in school board issues, invoking, among other statutes, the U.S. Patriot Act to prove that federal engagement was warranted. Her letter stated that the classification of these heinous actions could be the equivalent to a form of domestic terrorism and hate crimes. The NSBA sought assistance from the Department of Justice, FBI, Department of Homeland Security, Secret Service, and its National Threat Assessment Center. Although an early draft of the letter revealed that the NSBA also initially demanded that both the National Guard and military police be deployed against parents. Families across the country were shocked by this letter, and even more taken aback when 5 days later, lightning speed in Washington, D.C., Attorney General Merrick Garland signed a memo on October 4th, 2021, directing the Federal Bureau of Investigation, working with each United States attorney, to convene meetings with federal, state, local, tribal, and territorial leaders in each federal judicial district within 30 days of the issuance of this memorandum. Unsurprisingly, parents were frightened by this escalation. In the days following the release of DOJ's memo, we fielded dozens of requests from concerned parents who worried whether they should continue their advocacy work or simply stay home, fearing a knock at the door from federal law enforcement. Families' fears turned out to be well-founded. On October 14th, 2021, the acting U.S. Attorney for Montana sent a memo to the Montana Attorney General, all county attorneys, all sheriffs, the Montana Office of Public Instruction, and the Montana School Boards Association, outlining a short summary of federal statutes that may serve as a basis for a prosecution of such threats and violent conduct, in a move that calls to mind the law school game, Can You Indict a Ham Sandwich? 2 days later, on October 16th, 2021, the Deputy Assistant Director of the FBI's Criminal Investigative Division sent a joint message from his division and the FBI's Counterterrorism Division announcing the creation of the threat tag EDU officials to be applied to investigations and assessments of threats specifically directed against school board administrators, board members, teachers, and staff.
Brother GT3,
This memo wasn't
what's
revealed
up, man?
until a whistleblower provided it to this committee in November 2021. In May 2022, Chairman Jordan stated that the
Jeff,
Committee on the
what's
Judiciary
happening,
had
my
evidence
brother?
that this tag had been used against parents dozens of times. The question remains, however, what was the genesis of such a memo? On October 11th and 12th, 2021, I personally filed
Let me
public
do this
records
real
requests
fast.
in the
All right, since new folks have come in, new brothers have come in, Jeff, GT3, what's happening, my brothers? If I'm not real responsive during the stream, it's like I told guys before, and I'll show off some of the things I've done again once I get a few more things edited. But while we're listening to this, I'm actually writing a letter to my Congress critters from Alabama about a bunch of bills that are being proposed right now. I didn't see it till the other day, but Alabama has a safe storage law, a red flag law, a law that basically a change in the law that removes certain protections for those of us who carry, legally carry. They basically want to put us in prison if we go near a school zone, within 1,000 feet of a school zone. And then there's the one for duty to inform, to where if you have an interaction with a law enforcement officer and you don't tell them you are carrying or you have a gun in your vehicle, they want to make that a class. I have to look it up. Anyway, the highest misdemeanor you can get, which is punishable by up to a year in jail and would make you a prohibited person, prohibited possessor. What's up, Anthony Smith, man? Good to see you, brother. So I really wasn't planning on streaming tonight, but I need to work on this letter, and I wanted to listen to this hearing. So I'm just inviting the crowd. That's why I said it's a not share the pain stream. So Well, that's where we're sitting. So let me get back to this. Let's crank this here and back up. I just wanted to say hi to everybody, you guys coming in. My brothers out there, Anthony Smith and GT3. GT3, I hope you're doing better than healing up, brother. Well, back to the pain here.
Home districts of all NSBA board members to learn about the letter's creation. Those FOIA results revealed that not only were the majority of the NSBA board not told of the letter in advance, but that they were nearly all opposed to its contents. And furthermore, that NSBA leadership had been in talks with the White House over the letter's content for, quote, several weeks. In addition, I contacted each state affiliate of the NSBA to ask if their organization was involved in the creation of the letter, if they agreed with its substance and tone, and if they planned to report individuals in their state to DOJ. At last count, 26 states have either withdrawn their membership, participation, or dues from the NSBA. Attorney General Garland asserted in sworn testimony before both the House and Senate Judiciary Committees in October 2021 that his memo was written solely in response to the NSBA's letter. The NSBA apologized for its letter on October 22nd, 2021. Yet curiously, the Attorney General has yet to rescind DOJ's memo. Accordingly, it appears to remain in effect to this day, hanging over parents like the sword of Damocles. To be clear, my colleagues and I at Parents Defending Education have always opposed violence, and we continue to do so. Yet school boards seem to forget. Parents have a constitutional right to assemble, to speak, to petition their government for a redress of grievances. But sadly, the airing of these concerns is now viewed by elected officials as violent, offensive, or hateful, in many cases based solely upon the speaker's viewpoint. American families have many concerns about education which merit discussion and open debate. But there is no question that people have been chilled from speaking out against children's education. PDE has a tip line, and approximately 99% of the tips that we receive, people check a box because they want to be anonymous. They credibly fear retaliation, both against themselves as well as their children. It is lamentable that American parents no longer trust their local school officials, but it is tragic that they now fear the federal government. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Neely. Mr. Langhofer, you may begin.
Thank you, Chairman Johnson, Ranking Member Scanlon, and members of the subcommittee. My name is Tyson Langhofer. I'm the director of Alliance Defending Freedom's Center for Academic Freedom. Alliance Defending Freedom is the world's largest legal organization committed to protecting religious freedom, free speech, sanctity of life, marriage and family, and parental rights. My team works to protect the constitutional rights of students and faculty at America's schools and universities. I also work closely with ADF's Center for Parental Rights, so it's my pleasure to testify today on these two important subjects. The Supreme Court has recognized that parental rights are perhaps the oldest fundamental liberty interests protected by our Constitution. A fundamental distinction between a free society and a totalitarian one is whether the state exists to serve the people or whether the people exist to serve the state. This is often determined by a separate question. Who has primary authority over children, parents, or the government? Our constitutional tradition answers this question unambiguously. The child is not the mere creature of the state. It should hardly need saying how central free speech is in distinguishing a free society from a tyrannical one. But today, many Americans are questioning the value of free speech, especially speech they may find offensive. So it bears repeating that the kind of free speech that actually distinguishes a free society is the kind that permits its people to speak their mind even on the most contentious issues. As the Supreme Court said, freedom to differ is not limited to things that do not matter much. That would be a mere shadow of freedom. The test of its substance is the right to differ as to things that touch the heart of the existing order. Given the centrality of these two rights, they're all the more important when exercised in tandem, as when parents address their elected representatives about matters affecting their children's well-being and education. Unfortunately, the Biden administration has acted to curtail these rights. This action has come in many forms, but I'd like to direct this subcommittee's attention to two: Attorney General Merrick Garland's 2021 memorandum and the proposed rulemaking redefining sex in Title IX. With the wave of remote learning brought on by COVID-19, parents garnered a new perspective on their child's education. Many didn't like what they saw, especially when it came to curricular materials promoting radical, unscientific views about sex and gender. So they did what every citizen has a right to do. They went to their school boards. The school boards were not very receptive. Loudoun County was infamously hostile. One elementary school teacher, Tanner Cross, spoke in a public comment period about his opposition to a proposed policy that would require him to engage in social transition of his students. Within 48 hours, he was suspended. ADF represented him in a lawsuit against the board and secured his reinstatement, which was affirmed by the Virginia Supreme Court. But the school board subsequently enacted the policy and continued silencing people. Here's where the administration comes in. The Biden administration admitted that it worked with the National School Boards Association in producing a letter from the NSBA to the administration. The letter cited the events in Loudoun County and generalized parental opposition as, quote, acts of malice that were, quote, equivalent to a form of domestic terrorism. The NSBA later apologized, but the Biden administration had already gotten what it wanted, a pretext to target parents. A few days after the NSBA letter, A.G. Garland issued his memorandum mobilizing federal law enforcement officials. A.G. Garland claimed that this was focused exclusively on violent acts, but his own memorandum sweeps much broader, and it unquestionably chilled parents in exercising their rights. Even though the public outcry was severe, the administration would not rescind the memorandum. After intimidating parents into silence, then the administration moved to codify the very policies they were objecting to by proposing to redefine sex in Title IX to include sexual orientation and gender identity. And it expressly blesses policies that would require schools to engage in social transitions for students, even while hiding this from parents. ADF successfully represented a teacher in Kansas challenging such a policy, and ADF is currently representing parents in Wisconsin. In that case, the school wasn't just keeping social transition secret, they were insisting on doing it over the objection of the parents. The Title IX changes also dramatically impact free speech. ADF is representing a student, parent, and teachers, all of whom were punished for expressing a view about gender identity that was different from the view the school requires. In all of these cases, the school cites to Title IX as a basis for their coercive actions. The Biden administration's actions are both chilling and outright curtailing parents' most fundamental constitutional rights. I urge this subcommittee to use all means at its disposal to counter this executive overreach, and I welcome any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Langhofer. Ms. Justice, you may begin.
Good afternoon, distinguished members of the Constitution and Limited Government Subcommittee. My name is Tiffany Justice, co-founder of Moms for Liberty. Founded in 2021, Moms for Liberty has 275 chapters in 44 states and is growing every month. I want to begin by thanking you for taking up this important topic. Free speech has been chilled for too long by our own government. I applaud you for bringing attention to the intimidation and harassment of law-abiding citizens. Parents have the fundamental right to direct the upbringing of their children. That includes their education, medical care, morality, and religion. I want to be clear, these are inherent, natural rights. Parental rights do not stop at the classroom door. We do not co-parent with the government. In March 2020, public schools across the country were closed without parental input. Tina Deskovich and I, co-founders of Moms for Liberty, were serving on school boards in Florida. School districts shifted to virtual learning, but accountability for teaching and learning was lacking. Despite documented low student engagement, graduation rates remained steady, and federally mandated services were not being provided despite continued funding. Parents watched in horror as teachers' unions fought to keep schools closed. We watched as our children struggled with depression and anxiety, their development regressing at every turn. Nationally, parents were asking when and how had we become a nation that was more concerned with protecting adults than protecting children. Parents desperately wanted to help their children, and they turned to their school boards to try to understand why it was okay for people to gather and riot in the streets and not for children to gather and learn in classrooms. In the US, the right to petition the government to correct a wrong or achieve a goal is fundamental to the workings of our constitutional republic. Parents who took up this right were silenced. Then, the premier law enforcement agency of the United States of America, the FBI, was used as a weapon by the DOJ against parents who dared to voice their concerns at the most local level, their school board. Thanks to the whistleblower, we now have evidence that Attorney General Garland instructed the FBI to take action against parents, and that a threat tag was created for parents who spoke up in public meetings. How dare they? One of our moms was one of those parents targeted. 1 minute, you're making peanut butter and jelly, and the next minute, the FBI is calling you. You answer the phone, and they want to talk to you about your comments at a school board meeting last week. Do you have any guns in your home? Do you have a history of mental health illness? Oh, and by the way, don't tell anyone we called. When this mother called me, I was numb. I was shocked. I did not know what to say. Can the FBI ask you to be confidential about their inquiry to you? I immediately worked to make the Judiciary Committee members aware of the situation. Did the actions of the Biden administration chill the free speech of parents? Yes. There is no doubt. It sent shockwaves across this country that we still feel today. And what did this mom do wrong? She disagreed with her school board. That is not illegal in this country. We not allowed to have differing views? 115,000 members strong, we attended school board meetings, often facing unjust treatment. Parents were expelled, their mics were cut off, and many were prevented from speaking. We are moms, dads, uncles, aunts, grandparents, and concerned citizens. We are not domestic terrorists, and we will not be silenced to protect a failing system. The DOJ betrayed the trust of the American people. There must be accountability. While the FBI made phone calls to parents who spoke out at meetings and wrote memos calling concerned parents domestic terrorists, I submit to you what the federal government was not doing was paying attention to educating our children. America's public education system is failing. Perhaps the silencing of parents was meant to hide these facts, but we see, our eyes are open to a distressing truth that our children are being taught to distrust the sanctity of their own homes and to view the nation as broken and unjust. We witness schools and states fueling this fire, encouraging such beliefs to take hold. I ask you to hold accountable those that violated their oath to the Constitution, who trampled on our right to be heard, and who sought to use their position of power to subvert we, the parents. The number one indicator of student success is parental involvement. Any action by the government that undermines that jeopardizes the very future of this nation. We are joyful warriors. We are going to fight like hell for the future of this country with a smile on our face because our children are watching. Our members build relationships, spread truth to educate their communities, and empower parents to do the same. That is the power of parents.
Thank you, Ms. Justice. Ms. Johnson, now you may begin.
Thank you, Chairman Johnson, Chairman Jordan, Ranking Member Scanlon, and members of the subcommittee. My name is Nadine Fareed Johnson, and I am the Managing Director for Washington and Free Expression Programs at PEN America. It is an honor to testify here today. I am a daughter of immigrants, a mother of 2 young school-aged children, an attorney by training, and a proud American who had the privilege of serving her country under both the Obama and Trump administrations. PEN America, my employer, is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that stands at the intersection of literature and human rights to protect free expression in the U.S. and around the globe. We view free speech as an underpinning of democracy and a cause above politics, and we are unwavering in our commitment to upholding this foundational right. Today, we are in the midst of the broadest attack on First Amendment rights in schools and universities this country has seen in generations. Throughout our nation's history, we have seen waves of efforts to curtail access to books, but at every turn, these censorious efforts have ultimately failed. And the
Toy Town, seriously, what's up?
In this new era of censorship, we have tracked 303
Tell you
bills
what,
which
let's
we term
see.
educational gag orders in 44 states. These government restrictions forbid the teaching of specific curricula or ban certain concepts.
Pause this. I'll show you guys kind of what I'm looking at so far. And yeah, I'll get rid of that. Oh, I'm gonna have to share my whole screen again. So let's do, and then I'll do this just to kind of show you where I'm at with this letter. Screen share, some bitch. Screen share. Window. Oh hell, do that way. Okay, so you guys should be able to see this, and I'll show it to you. So you'll see where my name's at the top. That's where my address and everything will go. Forgive me for not throwing that on the video. All right, so far, this is what I'm working with. So to the Alabama legislature, I'm writing today concerning some very disturbing legislation currently being introduced in the Alabama legislature. These bills are HB 12, HB 28, HB 64, HB 123, and SB 126. Each of these bills will do nothing to stop gun crime. Should change that to violence. Let's do that. Because they always use the term gun violence. Do nothing to stop gun violence and will only serve to make criminals out of people that are no threat to others or public safety as a whole. The proposed laws are unconstitutional according to the Constitution of Alabama. The Alabama Constitution, Section 26, states that every citizen has the right to bear arms in defense of himself and the state. And I actually think they edited that and said himself and herself last year. So I might have pulled up an older copy. And of course, I cite that. I'm going to throw that in my references. I'm going to do this right. Section 26 of the Alabama Constitution restrains the state's power to regulate the arms that Alabama citizens can bear and where they can bear those arms. Make no mistake, this is not a Second Amendment issue. This is an issue of the protections of our rights under the Alabama Constitution, and Section 26 leaves no room for the regulation of arms owned or carried by the citizens of Alabama. Let me throw in the what? Carried by the citizens of Alabama. The Alabama Constitution is very clear. It makes no exception. It makes no exception for public safety or if the government of Alabama says you can. In fact, the Alabama Constitution is more clear than the federal Constitution as to who can bear arms and whether or not bearing arms is in connection with some let me put sort there, some sort. Whether or not it's with some sort of collective service like a militia. The Alabama Constitution states that bearing arms is a right for every citizen of Alabama. Let me explain each of the proposed bills and why they are unconstitutional. And then I'm going to go through and lay all this out. I kind of lay out what each bill is, kind of what it does, and then I've got to go through and basically shoot them down on everything and tell them just why they need to unfuck themselves. So that is my plan. Bull Rush, what's up, brother man? Yeah, Bull. Yeah, I know. I can't do that. I should, but I don't have a camera that zooms in that far. It's a good thing I pruned the shrubbery or I might lose a little bastard. Yeah. Again, I submit to the class. Not only worried about criminals, your right to self-defense, defense of others is always there. It's got nothing to do with the Second Amendment, even in the Alabama Constitution. Well, the Alabama Constitution actually lists self-defense, but the federal Constitution doesn't. The federal Constitution lists, the well-regulated militia, again, being necessary for a free state. It wasn't talking about any federal state. It was talking about the state of New York, the state of New Jersey, basically the colonies that were becoming states. It was saying these militias are necessary for these states to be free. And then it listed that the people had the right to keep and bear arms. The people had the right. So what the federal government did with the Second Amendment was they actually restricted their power to control arms so that the arms held in these states would be a check on both state power and federal power. So see, that's why when a state law California, something like that, is restricting arms, it should never be a Second Amendment issue. It should always be at a state level. Now, if the federal government is trying to make a law to regulate arms, that should be done in the federal courts. But there should be, I mean, if not, why would states' constitutions even matter if the federal constitution is always going to be beating someone over the head? Why not just everybody scrap your state constitutions and have a federal constitution if the federal constitution is all that matters? So here, let me get back to sharing the deal here, and I'm going to work on this letter some more. In
the classroom, we have already seen the chilling effects of this kind of legislation on educators around the country. Book banning is a compounding trend. We documented more than 2,500 instances of individual books being banned in the last school year alone, affecting 4 million children in 32 states. National and local groups purporting to represent
Sunflower, one of these nights, I need to do a stream with you. I'll be as respectful as I can possibly be, but I need to do a stream with you where we can talk about
access to books and ideas
bearing
with endorsement
arms,
of their content.
what Second Amendment
Books
means,
such as
what
Mein
state
Kampf, the
constitutions
Communist
mean,
Manifesto, Uncle Tom's
and just
Cabin,
actually
Gone
talk
with the
through
Wind
that.
are on public and school library shelves as they should be. The right approach to such materials is to contextualize them and to read and teach them with sensitivity and a critical eye, not to deny access. And the right answer when it comes to different ideas about books cannot be to cull the ones to which anyone objects. That would too easily leave nothing on the shelf. Parents have a right and a responsibility to be aware of, involved in, and express concerns about their children's education. That's why we have parent-teacher associations, sign up for parent-teacher conferences, attend school board meetings, and see school districts across the country publish their curricula. And for many of us, myself included, it's why we check our children's homework, read to them or encourage them to read each night, and advocate for them when the need arises. Yet much of what we are seeing now is not just parents being involved in their children's classrooms. It is instead an effort to impose the wishes of a few onto entire communities by enlisting the government to act as a proxy and engage in censorship on their behalf. Supreme Court jurisprudence has repeatedly made clear that the First Amendment, including the right to
Well, I'm
receive
not just
ideas
going to
and
have a
information,
conversation in private.
applies in public schools.
The only
School boards
woman
may
I
not
talk to
contract the spectrum
privately
of
is my
available knowledge.
wife.
We can certainly disagree about and debate training materials, classroom discussion topics, and more. And at times, materials in use in American schools may be tendentious or heavy-handed, but the right approach to handling this is to raise concerns and work together to address them. The answer is not legislated bans. Given our work all over the world to fight threats to free speech, we at PEN America are particularly attuned to the fact that educational censorship laws and book bans are a long-standing tactic of repressive regimes. Apartheid South Africa banned 12,000 books. The Nazi Party burned un-German ones. More recently, Iran banned the study of English in primary school. Hungary banned all curriculum referencing homosexuality from schools. And Russian laws banned so-called LGBT propaganda as well as criticisms of the state. Right now in the US, measures aimed at silencing the exchange of ideas and open inquiry in schools are creating a climate of intimidation and fear that detracts from teaching and learning. We risk giving students only a sanitized, narrow education that will constrain their ability to understand and engage with the multiplicity of ideas, perspectives, people, and stories that make up our world. An erosion of trust in our educational institutions, our education professionals, and one another risks undermining fundamental elements of our democracy. I want to end with the words of a speaker at a meeting of the Martin County, Florida School Board earlier this week. A 100-year-old woman named Grace Lynn stepped up to speak, indicating she had attended to share her shock and dismay at the recent book bans in her county. She noted that her husband had died young fighting in the Second World War to defend our democracy, our Constitution, and our freedoms. And she said, "Banned books and burning books are the same. Both are done for the same reason, fear of knowledge. Fear is not freedom. Fear is not liberty. Fear is control. Let us choose courage instead." Thank you.
Thank you, and thank all of our witnesses. You all kept it under 5 minutes. That's beautiful. We'll now proceed under the 5-minute rule that we hold our members to as well. Those questions will begin by myself as the chair, recognizing the gentlewoman from Wyoming for her 5 minutes.
Thank you, and thank you to the witnesses for being here today. Parents have every right to know what their children are being taught, what information is being given to them, and how schools are spending our tax dollars. Parents have every right to engage with their local school district and to make their concerns known and to demand accountability for the education of their children. And they also have every right to demand that their children not be indoctrinated, but again, be educated instead. Even though there are now multiple ways for information to be provided to parents today, it seems that educational institutions are more opaque than ever. And we must ask, why is that? Could it be that if parents actually got to see what their sons and daughters are being taught, that maybe the far left agenda of critical race theory, gender confusion, and environmental alarmism might be in danger of elimination? I think that's exactly right. Ms. Justice, in the NSBA letter that has been discussed, that called parents domestic terrorists and asking for the federal government to crack down on them, the NSBA claimed, quote, "This propaganda continues despite the fact that critical race theory is not taught in public schools and remains a complex law school and graduate school subject well beyond the scope of a K-12 class." Moms for Liberty has done a great deal of work all over the country, including in Wyoming. And have you found examples of CRT and other concerning political ideology in classrooms?
Sorry, first time here. Yes, ma'am, we have. It's been really unfortunate, and Nikki could speak to this as well, the incidences of propaganda, of ideology in the classrooms. And you know, many people will say, well, CRT isn't being taught. No, it's not being taught. And they're not teaching a graduate level course in schools. But what they are doing is teaching through the lens of critical race theory and critical theory in general. And it's demoralizing our children, and it's having an effect that's causing division amongst the children. And we're seeing increases of violence across the country that we're very concerned about.
Well, and I think that's exactly right. So I'm going to be very blunt in my next question. Is it fair to say that the NSBA lied to the Biden administration and DOJ about the teaching of CRT in our lower grades?
Yeah, I absolutely think they did. What we saw, I mean, the National Center for Education Statistics conducted a study of long-term trends in reading and math assessments for 9-year-olds to examine student achievement during the pandemic. Average scores declined 5 points in reading and 7 points in mathematics compared to 2020. My question continues to be, why do we continue? You're talking about books here, but no one wants to talk about reading proficiency. American parents are very concerned about what's happening in our schools. And I think it was a real effort to silence us when we came to the school boards. The school board members did not want to answer questions, and they wanted to protect the system.
I think that's exactly correct. And there's one other point that I think is important to make, and that is that we have a committee report that cites numerous instances in which the National Threat Operations Center routinely received tips based on everything related to parents and their involvement and attendance at school boards, except they're engaging in unlawful action. Through the full committee and our select subcommittee on the weaponization of the federal government, we have routinely exposed that the DOJ has not been going after violent acts or unlawful acts, but they've been going after people with whom the left disagrees. Would you agree?
Yes, ma'am, I would.
Okay. Ms. Johnson, I just have a real quick question for you. Do you believe it is censorship to prohibit teachers from exposing first graders to Penthouse magazine?
Do I believe it is I'm sorry, ma'am. Do I believe it's censorship to?
Do you believe it is censorship to prohibit teachers from exposing first graders to Penthouse magazine?
I don't know of any instances in which
That isn't my question. My question is, do you believe that it is censorship to prohibit teachers from exposing first graders to Penthouse magazine?
I believe that it is important that we have parents, teachers, and educators.
You are not going to
involved.
answer my question then, is that right?
I believe it is important to have parents, teachers, and educators involved in understanding what is being presented to students.
Do you believe that
and
it is
there is-
appropriate to present Penthouse to first graders?
Of course not.
Thank you. I yield back.
Thank the gentlelady. Now recognize the ranking member, Ms. Scanlon, for 5 minutes.
Thank you. As I noted in my opening statement, we've seen a troubling rise in violence, threats, and intimidation against school officials in recent years. I would note that most of these school officials are in fact parents, grandparents, moms and dads in their own right. Furthermore, overwhelmingly unpaid public servants, unlike those who are seeking to weaponize the school board proceedings for their own attention-getting or political purposes. Yes, parents have a right to protest vigorously at school board meetings under the First Amendment, but intimidation and threats are not protected by the First Amendment when they go too far, and that's
Legislators shall
certainly what we
pass
saw. It wasn't people
such
offering
penal
peanut
laws
butter
as it may
sandwiches to
deem
school board members.
expedient
It
to
was people
suppress
saying to school
the
board
evil
members,
practice of
we're going
bullying.
to kill you, or contacting the children of school board members and saying,
Apparently,
we're
there's
going
no
to
more
kill you
dueling
and
in
your
Alabama.
parents. So, I mean, we're not talking about idle
Where was that?
policy discussions here. We're talking about threats against individuals based upon their political positions. Political violence is un-American. Ms. Fareed Johnson, can you speak to the difference between protected speech under the First Amendment and threats of violence?
Yes, thank you for the question. You are correct that there are certain narrowly
Payment of
defined types of
salary,
expression that do not receive
grants.
First Amendment protection. And these do
Yeah, I'm
include
reading through the
incitement and
Alabama
true threats.
Constitution here.
The key with incitement is that the imminence of the reaction. Will there be an immediate unlawful reaction as a result of speech advocating illegal conduct? Will there be an immediate violent reaction as a result of the communication? These are quite different from protected speech, even passionate or zealous speech that is certainly protected. And PEN America, we want people to show up at school board meetings. We want people in the community to be able to engage. It's critically important that we have that discourse. What we also understand is that there are limitations, and those do include, as I mentioned, incitement and true threats.
Sure, and certainly we've seen situations where there is a disruption to a public proceeding. In fact, there was one across the Capitol this afternoon as the Republican chair of a subcommittee had father of a child murdered at Parkland removed from a hearing and arrested. So perhaps the protected speech is in the eye of the beholder at certain times. I would ask unanimous consent to
No,
enter into
lady,
the record
when
a
they're
Reuters
in a
report
hearing like
documenting
that,
over 200
no matter if their
threats
child
to
was killed
school
or not, they
officials
don't have the
made
right
during
to
the relevant,
interrupt the hearing and raise hell.
time period. It's a special report on USA education threats.
Without objection.
Thank
Is
you.
what it is.
And I would also enter into the record an article from Chapelboro. Proud Boys' presence leads to metal detectors and deputies at school board meetings.
Without objection.
Thank you. Ms. Fareed Johnson, American democracy relies
in the
upon
chat for
an
a minute. Maybe I'll
informed
freaking
and engaged
Keep my eyes
citizenry.
from bleeding reading this Constitution.
How do attacks on the First Amendment in terms of what books students have access to and
What I would chat
what
about is
subjects teachers are allowed to
Sunflower
teach?
is whether or
How
not the
does that
government
impact
has
our
the right to
democracy
restrict
and hinder
arms,
students'
public
ability to
safety,
participate
whatever
in
else,
real-world
and
experiences?
what arms are used for. We can go over this
It is
whole
critically important that
BS
we
that,
allow a
oh, the
true
children are
diverse
all dying
perspective
from
of
arms.
viewpoints and information to be taught in our schools. And I
Yeah,
want to be
we
really clear
can
here
go
that
through all that.
generations of children have read stories about experiences and lives that are
We can
different
also
from their
go
own.
through, and I've
Reading
proved
about
it
the
on stream
Holocaust does not
already,
make one a Nazi. Understanding what happened during the Jim Crow
during
era
the
does not make
founding
one a
period,
civil rights lawyer
citizens
or
owned
otherwise.
every arm
What
that
we
the
need to be
government
able to
owned.
do is to
And that's what our
ensure
founders
that people
meant
are
when
informed,
they
because
did
as the
our
Supreme Court has said,
Constitution.
when we allow free expression in the classroom, because we know the First Amendment rights do not stop at the schoolhouse door, when we allow that type of expression, what we are doing is preparing these students for life in a democracy, a participatory democracy, one that does require
Jeff,
us
you're right.
debate to understand and to
The
discuss.
length of a mass
The
shooting
more
versus
that
the
we
response
shield
time for
people
police is
from
insane.
understanding the world around them, the worse off we will be. And I have to also say that this is a global issue as well. You know, at PEN America, we work on issues all around the world, and we see what happens when authoritarian types of decision making can affect what happens to a populace.
Boy, these
It is
cats
critically
over on
important that
Rumble
we
are
have
just
an
too damn
informed,
quiet, man. They don't like seeing anything.
population that understands how to debate civilly, that understands discourse, and that works together so we can move forward.
And I hope the stream on
And
Rumble
I think
isn't
that is one of the
lagging
big
as
fears
much
here,
as
that
looks
it
like.
undermines our communities to allow a very noisy minority to dictate what everybody gets to hear. So it's not that a particular voice is being silenced. It's that
It's
we need
funny
to work
that,
together, parents and
again,
teachers,
anything the left
to
accuses
develop our community
us of,
standards. So thank
it's
you.
what the left
yield
is
back.
actually doing.
Gentlelady's time's expired. I will enter without objection into the record a copy of the interim staff report on the Committee on the Judiciary and the Select Subcommittee on the Weaponization of the Federal Government dated March 21, 2023, and entitled A
Let me get back to the
Manufactured
Alabama
Issue and
Constitution.
Misapplied Priorities. Subpoenaed documents show no legitimate basis for the Attorney General's anti-parent memo, with the conclusion that the overwhelming majority of judicial districts reported not having heard of any instances or threats of violence being leveled at school board officials. I will now recognize the gentleman from South Carolina for his 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this hearing today, and thank you to our witnesses for being here. Families stand at the center of our society, and every family has a personal stake in promoting excellence in education. Excellence does not begin in Washington. This is straight from Ronald Reagan's 1984 State of the Union speech. Mr. Chairman, I think that quote is as true today and even more so than it was 40 years ago. Due to liberals pushing their woke agenda on our kids, school boards have become ground zero for some of America's most contested issues: mask mandates, critical race theory, pronoun insanity, and rewriting U.S. history, just to name a few. Thankfully, the 14th Amendment of the Constitution reiterates that fundamental right of parents to make decisions as to the care, custody, and control of their children. So it's only natural for parents to advocate on their child's behalf. It is interesting that President Biden, as a proud father himself, fails to relate to parents in this way, because as a result of parents speaking out, as you have experienced, the Biden administration and the National School Boards Association colluded to issue a memo to bring in law enforcement to these school board meetings and effectively silence parents. In November of 2021, the NSBA's letter to the Biden administration referred to those parents advocating for their children as domestic terrorism and hate crimes. Are you kidding me at this point? When I was a member of the South Carolina legislature, I, along with 36 other Republicans, called on the South Carolina School Boards Association to pull out of the NSBA, and within a week, South Carolina joined the long list of states that were no longer part of that national association. These parents are not domestic terrorists. They are simply parents who want the best for their kids. And in fact, I would offer that it is important for parents to work with school board members and not to have that divide between them that is arbitrarily put up by this administration. Mr. Langhofer, can you describe an instance where you represented a parent or teacher who was being retaliated against for speaking at a school board meeting?
Sure, absolutely. We represent, and currently still do represent, Tanner Cross. And Tanner is a teacher in Loudoun County for many years. And he went to an open school board meeting to object to a proposed policy, which was going to force him as a teacher and all students to participate in the social transition of students. And he spoke his 1 minute, left, went the next day to school and taught his PE class. And he got a call that night, you need to come to the HR tomorrow. And the next day he was suspended for simply exercising his constitutional right to speak about a proposed policy that was going to adversely affect every student in his class. We had to file a lawsuit, get an injunction, and get him reinstated. And that went they fought that, even after they lost to the circuit court, to the Virginia Supreme Court. And we're still down there now fighting that policy that they enacted over the objections of the teachers and parents later that year.
Thank you. Do you think the Attorney General's October 4th memo, did that result in hostility toward parents that were advocating against some of the liberal agenda items that were coming in front of
If you're focusing on the object, not the crime or the criminal,
teachers across the country who indicated that they were really worried about whether they still had the right to go speak at these school board meetings. When you've got the power of the Department of Justice and the FBI telling you that if you go to these school board meetings, you may be labeled a domestic terrorist by the NSBA.
Yeah, seriously, I'd have to do
it. Absolutely affected them.
Kind of a set,
and you know, it took away their right to advocate for their.
It'll probably go crazy and go off the rails.
Their constitutional right.
Yeah, on the one hand, it would seem to indicate that parents were not welcome at a school board meeting to talk freely with their elected representatives. Is that?
Yeah, boy, man, I was going to ask anybody if they've seen it yet. I want to watch it.
What's fair to say, because the DOJ issued their letter
solely
based upon the SBA, and then SBA has now retracted that letter and apologized for it.
Right. And on the other hand, instead of kind of setting up a collaborative approach where parents are working with school boards, you kind of have that divided line with this memo that makes it a very adversarial process when a parent comes before the school board. Would you agree with that?
Hold on.
It absolutely made it.
We're pausing this for a sec. Seriously. Are you seriously saying you've never watched a John Wick movie? I bet you've never watched Red Dawn either. That's criminal. We need to make a law about that shit. Yeah, Bacon, you need to seriously watch some good movies, man. The cool thing about this going off the rails a little bit. The cool thing about the John Wick series is Keanu Reeves is actually a very good shooter. The videos of him training with Terran Tactical and watching him manipulate weapons and move and shoot, the dude, he is freaking good. Okay, that's a redeeming quality series. If you've seen, now hold on. Now we're talking about the original Red Dawn, not that shitty remake. Yeah, the thing is, Bull Rush, I have issues giving Hollywood any money these days. Okay, so seriously, you've seen both. So as long as you like the first one better, we won't have to completely disown you.
It created a much more hostile environment for parents to be able to collaborate in the political process.
In your experience, what are some of the topics that parents bring up at these school board meetings? And do you think that these parents have valid concerns in bringing them up at a school board meeting?
Yeah, our experience with parents and teachers that we represent are they were advocating against policies which would force every teacher at a school to participate in the social transition of students as young as kindergarten and first grade without the permission of their parents and hiding that information from the parents. They also were objecting to curriculum and materials and presentations which classified students based upon their race or their religion and sex and classified them into oppressors or oppressed and labeled them and then created this divide at the school that wasn't there prior to those curricular materials.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Without a yield back.
Thank you. Gentleman's time's expired, and Chair recognizes the gentleman from New York, Mr. Nadler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Free Johnson, you wrote in your testimony that we must distinguish between well-developed, widely accepted methods of interplay between political bodies, educational systems, parents, and citizens, and the current state of deliberate methods to exert ideological control over what can be read, learned, or thought about in schools. Can you explain how current book bans and other forms of censorship are ways you describe to exert ideological control of what can be read, learned, or thought about in schools?
Yes, sir. Thank you for the question. The issue that we are seeing here is that there is, in our research, we have found that there is this sweeping movement to ban all of these books in schools, sometimes hundreds of books at a time. And what we're seeing here is a particular direction toward the books that are being banned. We are seeing books that have topics of LGBTQ plus issues or identities, books talk about race or racism. And what is happening then is that students do not have access to this information. When a book is taken out of circulation, when it is banned from use by a student, that is censorship. It is government censorship. And that is denying students the right to and the ability to access this information. What that does in a bigger picture is that it points us in a direction whereby we have a narrowing of the understanding of students, and we're doing two things that I think are critical to understand. The first is that we are risking creating an environment in which students feel excluded. Students deserve to have access to information and to see themselves reflected in books, and not only that, but to understand others. We're also risking the opportunity, we're throwing away the opportunity really, to allow students to develop empathy and to exercise that empathy. And then finally, we are also not preparing our students then for active and effective participation in our pluralistic society in a way that will make them the engaged adults we hope they will be.
Thank you. Ms. Free Johnson, the Supreme Court its plurality opinion in Board of Education versus PICO, rejected a school board's claim of absolute discretion to remove books from a school library. In reaching its opinion, the court observed that, quote, access to ideas makes it possible for citizens generally to exercise their rights of free speech and press in a meaningful manner, and that such access prepares students for active and effective participation in the pluralistic, often contentious society in which they will soon be adult members. What effect does censorious legislation have on students' preparation for adulthood?
If we do not have students who understand the world around them, they will be less prepared to engage in that world. We need students to understand not only different types of people, different types of families, different types of communities. We need them also to understand what has come before. So much of what we're seeing in these bans actually has to do with US history and world history. And that, again, contracts the amount of knowledge that these students have and allows them and does not prepare them well to engage, and also doesn't allow them to learn from what came before. When we're talking about these situations that have come, sometimes we have many dark periods in history. What we need to be able to do, though, is understand from those periods of history, to learn from them and to do better. If we don't give students the information, then they won't be equipped to do better.
Thank you. Ms. Marie Johnson, did the NYSSBA letter call parents domestic terrorists? If not, what did it in fact say?
I actually don't have the letter before me. My understanding is that it did not refer to them, refer to parents as directly as terrorists. And look, I'm a parent. I'm a parent who gets involved in her children's education. Some might use the term helicopter to describe me, and I wear that badge with pride. It is something that is really important for parents to be
Oh,
engaged.
I'm sure I'd use more than the
PEN
term
America,
helicopter
we
to describe
consistently
you,
stand up
lady.
against the chilling of speech. We believe that people have a right and frankly, a duty to speak up and be heard at school board meetings and other public fora. We would oppose efforts to restrict that, but we also understand that true threats, whether they be against school members, Supreme Court justices,
It's just some Jesus
members of
Christ,
Congress,
when this Constitution goes
these
off
must be
the
taken
fucking
seriously. And we believe that we can achieve both. We can
Change
ensure that
districts,
you
repeal,
have a right to speak, and we are and without infringing on or chilling
suspension.
speech.
Thank you. And finally, Ms. Marie Johnson,
Oh, it's
what are you currently hearing from parents, students, librarians, and teachers? What challenges are they facing, and what are they most concerned about?
Tax
So
for
we're
malaria
hearing quite a
control
bit. And I
in
will say,
Limestone
and
County.
again, I mentioned I'm a
Oh,
parent.
knew
Most parents, we're tired. It's, it's making breakfast and seeing what's coming up in homework and what's on the schedule and who has what sport. But we are also wanting to ensure that our school systems are really working for everyone. And that means that we don't have the viewpoints of one or two or a handful of parents then twisted and used by the government to censor. That's really what we're worried about. From teachers, from librarians, actually there's an incredible study by RAND recently that talked about over a quarter of teachers who have in these 20 different states where these ego bans have passed, they are worrying about what to teach. They're examining their curricula. They're concerned about potentially offending someone. And that's a situation in which they're not actually allowed to do their jobs, the jobs they were trained to do. Same thing with librarians. And we see the empty shelves, the pictures of empty shelves. They're not being able to do their jobs, and they're being asked to take on something that is really beyond the scope of their role in a way that ultimately chills their speech and chills their ability to do their job, I should say.
Okay.
Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you. Time's expired. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Texas for his 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank the witnesses for being here. I really appreciate your time. Really appreciate it. Thank you. When parents begin exercising their right to question their local school boards during the height of COVID, amid mass mandates, woke curricula, and harassment in schools, how did the DOJ respond? The Department of Justice responded under Merrick Garland with directing the public to report threats of violence to school board members, officials, and workers in our national public schools to a national hotline. One particular case, a mom was reported to the hotline as a threat because she was A, conservative, and B, she was a lawful gun owner, like myself. The complainant alleged that the mom was a threat because she belonged to a right-wing group known as Moms for Liberty. And I have a real problem with identifying people like this because it's your right to belong to whoever you want to belong to, and that's your freedoms. Another investigation opened because a tip to the hotline, a dad was investigated because according to the complainant, the dad fit the profile of an insurrectionist. I don't really know what that means, but that's interesting. And he had a lot of guns and threatened to use them. Yet when the FBI asked about the complainant about these threats from the dad, the complainant admitted that no specific information or
Soldier, you're
observations
cool.
or
Don't
any
worry about
threats-
anything.
threats. According to the FBI, not one of these school board-related investigations resulted in federal arrest
So I was just
or
picking back from
charges,
the
not a
chat.
single one. Recently, the DOJ announced that they were going to continue to prosecute people from January 6th to the tune of around 1,000 more people to be charged in not so distant future. Now, January 6th was over 2 years ago, and the DOJ is still looking to charge more people. Yet, when there is a true domestic terror threat like Antifa, the DOJ did not direct people to a national hotline, nor do they report these threats to our communities. Now, my colleagues on the left will tell you that Antifa doesn't exist. It's an idea. But my question is where is the intellectual curiosity to determine how Antifa, a highly coordinated domestic
You
terrorist
sent something to me,
organization,
Chamber, and I
is
didn't.
funded and
I
organized?
didn't see it. Where did you send it to?
The DOJ did
I
not
know
set
you
up a
said
hotline for
text, but I haven't
Antifa.
seen
Set up a
anything come
hotline
through.
for you. No federal resources were set aside to investigate the violence that we saw unleashed across this country during the Summer of Love in 2020. Please note some of these photos. Wait a minute, that's not January 6th. That's May 31st, 2020. That's right in front of the White House. That's where the president lives. And at the time, President Trump was ushered into a bunker because his life was being threatened.
Now,
Where was the hotline?
that was something
Next
that
photo.
the people on the left just made fun of the whole time. Ooh, Trump had to run to his bunker.
That's not January 6th either. That's July 27th. That is in Portland. And that is Antifa rioting and pillaging our country.
Fiery,
Where was the
but
hotline?
mostly peaceful.
Next slide.
Big
Well, hot damn.
billions of dollars that they did during
That's
this
not
riot.
January 6th either. Those are more rioters that are
How
destroying
many
and
people
rioting
got
in Salt Lake
killed
City.
during
Next
those
slide.
riots?
I believe is that it? But wait, there's more. And that's not January 6th either.
Hold
That's
on, let's
June
wonder if
1st,
I can find
2020. And that's the streets of DC are being rioted and pillaged by rioters. Where's the outrage? Where's the hotline? This is what domestic terror looks like. This is not a school board meeting. There is no hotline for any of these riots. And we are going to have a hotline that's going to report parents for caring about their children's education. And even further, the DOJ would rather investigate 1,000 more people from January 6th than any single person in these photos.
I wonder if I can find
What a
it.
shame. And that is why this is no longer the Department of Justice. It is the Department of Subjective Justice. And with that, I yield back.
Thank the gentleman. Chair recognizes next, gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My friends on the other side of the aisle, the MAGA Republicans, want you to believe that ex-President Trump won the election and is still the president.
Yeah, let me show a video.
And they want
And of course, now this is completely freaking trying to blow this out of the water. But what happened with this dude, and I saw this when it happened, this dude took a wrong turn and got caught in one of these fucking riots. And they start to try to pull this dude out of the car. He's got a fucking Glock with a damn stick mag in it. I think he shot one dude in the arm, and then he takes off running to get to the cops because they just about fucking disable his car. So let's see. Let's share this tab instead. And of course, they cut off this guy trying to get away from all these riders, trying to back out, trying to get away from them. And of course, they're going to try to fucking say that this dude did something wrong when he just defended himself. Let me throw that up big. Hold on, let me back that up because they cut it off. This dude was just a construction worker trying to go to work. And then here's one where someone was just trying to get away from these fuckers and they're trying to stop them. Of course, they get their ass run over. And people wonder why you need magazines with more than 10 rounds or and like I said, they shut it. They don't show you the parts where they were trying to pull this dude out of his car and fucking trying to kill him. But I like how dude, he gets out and he's just like, yep, fuck it. I'm armed. All you bastards can get somewhere. You don't see him fucking trying to tag everybody. Admittedly, a fuck, man. Yeah, right. They say, I believe them when me shit turns purple and smells like rainbow sherbet. Again, just people trying to just fucking not get stopped by these assholes because they're trying to fucking tear them out of their cars. And then all of a sudden they get fucked up. I take that. And then everybody wants to damn try to throw a fit. That one, hold on. That one, oh God, there was something else with that one and I can't remember. People are so full of fucking shit.
I want you to believe that the insurrection of January 6th was not an insurrection. It was just a tourist visit. And they want you to believe that the Tooth Fairy is woke and anti-Christian. And they also want you to believe that they will find something incriminating in Hunter Biden's laptop. And they also want you to believe that
what's up, Sam, man? What's going on, brother?
Chilling of parents' fundamental rights by the Biden administration. There's absolutely no evidence to support the MAGA conspiracy theories about a far-ranging federal government effort to chill parents' speech. And if the MAGA Republicans were truly concerned with protecting free speech, they would focus on the efforts of some Republican-controlled state legislatures to ban books.
Again, hold on, we got to find something real fast because we have to pay homage to Hank Johnson. Okay. I got to get back to doing my research, but I'm kind of goofing off because I'm stuck on something.
That
so we got to listen to this.
Widest level is what?
Sam, I'm trying to work on writing a letter to my Congress people in Alabama,
and at its smallest level,
to stream this while I was doing
smallest.
So we got to listen to Hank Johnson.
Location, it's 7 miles between one shore and the other. Is that correct?
I don't have the exact dimensions, but to your point, sir, I think Guam is a small island.
Very small island and about 24 miles, if I recall, long.
Oh
So
boy.
20
Put on
24
your
miles
helmets because you're
long,
fixing to
about
get hit right in the
7
fucking head.
miles
with a boatload
wide
of
at
stupid.
the least widest place on the island, and about 12
see it now, Chuck.
miles wide on the widest part of the island. And I don't know how many square miles that is. Do you happen to know?
I don't have that figure with me, sir. I can certainly supply it to you if you'd like.
Yeah, my fear is that the whole island will become so overly populated that it will tip over and capsize.
Okay, dude, I'll check that one out.
We don't anticipate that. The Guam population, I think, currently about 175,000, and again, with 8,000 Marines and their families, it's an addition
Okay,
of
cool
about
deal.
25,000 more
Thanks, Chamber.
into the population.
The whole island will become so overly populated that it will tip over and capsize.
We don't anticipate.
Yes. This congressperson, this lawmaker, he is also a lawyer. Just asked a Navy admiral. Basically, he was scared that the island of Guam would capsize if we put too many Marines on the island. This is the caliber of stupid that we're dealing with legislators. Thinking an island will tip over. Capsize, as he put it, because he likes big words. Yeah, dude, that was funny as shit. AOC not knowing what a garbage disposal was. And these people get elected. And not only do they get elected once in most cases, they continue to get elected. Hank Johnson has been in Congress for a very long time. And he, at some point in his life, got tied to the stupid tracks. And the longest stupid train that you can imagine ran his ass over. Backed up, ran him over again, and I think is still to this day running him over. That is Hank Johnson, Jeff. He is a congressman from Georgia. And one of these days, I really need to do it. I need to, goddamn, I keep dropping my fucking phone. I need to do a compilation video of Hank Johnson's greatest hits. And just basically go through and really show everybody the caliber of this massively intellectual person. So back to Hank Johnson.
Censor our history and limit what can be discussed in schools. According to research by PEN America, state lawmakers have introduced 303 educational gag order bills since January of 2021 and have instituted more than 2,500 book bans in the 2021-2022 school year.
Oh man, let me get back to
If
reading the
MAGA
Constitution of
Republicans were
Alabama.
interested really in protecting free speech, they would not throw out grieving parents from a congressional hearing like they did today for voicing their opinions about their children being killed by gun violence. Schools are where children learn how to be engaged and thoughtful citizens in a democracy. And these educational gag orders that are being promoted by some of these witnesses today are such that they prevent children from learning their full history about what really happened in America and learning basic skills to understand and analyze different viewpoints. How can we have a healthy democracy if we put blinders on our children's education and act like an authoritarian regime? Beyond that, these educational gag orders erase the experiences of our Black children and our LGBTQ children. Kids deserve to know and see themselves in books. They deserve to be able to express their true selves, and children of all races deserve to learn their history so that they understand the present. How can we expect adults of the future to consider and address contentious issues if they're taught as children that they should shut down discussion of an opposing idea, deny uncomfortable truths, and erase the existence of people who are different from them? We should all be able to agree that state-imposed censorship and book bans violate our cherished right to free expression and send the wrong message to children about core principles of democracy. Now, Ms. Niley, you're president of Parents Defending Education, which takes money from the Koch brothers, isn't that true? Well, you take money from the Koch brothers, that's my question. Isn't that correct?
We believe in donor privacy, and I do not discuss where our money
all right,
comes from.
okay.
However, I
All
do
right, well,
actually would like, no, I'd like to,
reclaiming my time, Ms. Justice, your group is a dark money group, and you got your...
See, that I'm trying to read this other stuff, but see, that's a tactic these dickheads use all the time. Reclaiming my time. When you ask someone a question in a hearing or you make an accusation like that, by the rules of order, they have the right to address that. You're not supposed to just be able to cut them off. But see, these dickheads don't know anything about the processes they're supposed to operate by. It's fucking annoying. Hank Johnson deserves to be slapped right in the mouth.
You'll start opposing mask mandates to protect children and school workers from COVID. Isn't that true?
Push your button there.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. And Mr.
If you speak up, make sure you push the button. Hold on just a second.
Langhofer.
Ms. Johnson, hang on just a second. I want to remind everybody to push the button so we can hear your voice when you respond.
May I answer now?
And Mr.
Yes, you can answer.
Oh, thank you. No, sir.
I'm reclaiming my time.
I didn't have my
And
mic on.
And Mr. Langhofer, the Southern Poverty Law Center
Ain't
has
nothing to it, Corn
designated
Pop.
the Alliance Defending Freedom as an LGBTQ
How's the
hate
yoke
group.
doing?
Isn't that correct?
Alliance Defending Freedom is one of the world's most respected Supreme Court advocates. We've won 14 Supreme Court cases in the last 12 years. We advocate for the
You are a
rights of all
hate group,
people,
are you not?
all walks of life.
You've been designated as a hate group, correct?
We are a
Now, one of the Republican senators mentions it. Basically, all you have to do to be designated as a hate group is be a conservative organization. That's it. The Southern Poverty Law Center, the ACLU, and a couple other groups like that have completely lost their ever-loving fucking mind. And Hank Johnson up there screaming about someone being a hate group, again, he deserves to be smacked right in the mouth. And the only reason he can get up there on that dais and fucking do that shit is because he doesn't have any fear of someone coming up and smacking right in the mouth. not advocating for violence YouTube. Maybe someone needs to do the whole cartoon thing where they, blow into their thumb and their hand gets all big and just walk up and Mickey Mouse slap his ass. Fucking people are disgusting. But hey, there are lawmakers.
An experienced Supreme Court advocacy organization.
I will
that advocates for
yield
everybody's
back my
rights.
time.
Yeah, you yield back. SPLC has zero credibility. They've made a habit over the last 4 years of labeling all conservative groups as hate groups. So you need to expand your sources.
They labeled all hate groups as hate groups.
Okay. All right. Gentlemen's time's expired.
Yeah, Corn Pop, you're going to get roto-rooter, brother. Good luck with that. Yeah, my dad just had one done. Last Tuesday? Yeah, last Tuesday had one done. Yeah, that's no pun intended. That shit is no fun.
Fired, and the chair now recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Roy.
I thank the gentleman from Louisiana. Ms. Neely, I know you wanted to comment just a minute ago. I just wanted to see if I could get you to, within maybe 2 or 3 minutes, so I can go to another subject, explain a little bit of the great work that your organization has been doing. I think you're one of the true experts here and one of the heroes in exposing what has been going on in this administration to target parents. On September 29th, 2021, the National School Board Association sends a letter to President Biden equating parents to domestic terrorism. Scott Smith was one of those people. I invited him to be my guest at the State of the Union. He was trying to defend his daughter to a school board. And then he suddenly becomes the poster father for, quote, domestic terrorism. The superintendent at Loudoun County has been fired. The Commonwealth attorney on the case has been removed. On October 4th, after that September 29th memo, the attorney general put out a memo. And I know that the gentlelady is familiar with it. On October 20th, and the FBI assistant director of counterterrorism sent an email referencing the October 4th Garland directive, and then established the threat tag, domestic terrorism, which the Judiciary Committee ranking member just blithely just sweeps aside. It would be not concerning at all for an American to be have a threat tag associated with them as domestic terrorists. This year, on January 11th, 2022, you told officers he was writing a letter to provide information to the White House from a request from Secretary Cardona. I want you to explain that. And on February 14th, 2022, NSBA leadership knew of DOJ memo before its release. Can you walk through all of your great work through the Freedom of Information Act to establish these facts that we are now relying upon to understand the dangers of this administration?
Through the Freedom of Information Act request that we received back from the NSBA board members in their districts, 2 of the board members, Christy Sweat from the Salt Lake City School District, was corresponding with Marnie Maldonado from, I believe, Washington State. And she speculated that Secretary Cardona had been the impetus for that letter. I know that this chair, this committee has requested documents from the Department of Education and the Department of Justice, which have not yet been turned over to them by either department. And so we are unable to prove the veracity of that. But that is something that, again, an executive committee member of the NSBA asserted, and I think is something that the American people deserve answers on. The fact that Mary C. Wall, who is a senior advisor in the Domestic Policy Council of the White House, was intimately involved in this, maintains her job to this day, and is, I believe, a leader in the COVID-19 response team, has not yet been held accountable for this. No one who was involved in the genesis of this memo has ever been called to account for this. And so we demand answers on that. I think we deserve to know answers to that, how our tax dollars were weaponized against us as American citizens. This is a betrayal of us as Americans.
Is there any doubt in your mind that there was collusion between the National School Board Association and the White House and the Department of Justice to target parents and coordinate the threat tag of domestic terrorism in light of the engagement in parents and school boards like Scott Smith?
There's no question in my mind whatsoever. This had been in the works for several weeks before. There was also evidence that the National Association of Secondary School Principals, they released a statement on September 16th, 2021, calling for federal intervention. The American Association of School Superintendents also put out a statement, although they, in NSBA documents that were later released in May 2022, declined to request federal intervention. It feels very much like there was an effort afoot by a number of outside organizations to gin up support for a pretextual investigation by the federal
So
government.
moving on to another subject in my minute and a half that I have left, I've heard a lot of colleagues on my other side of the aisle talking about book bans and accusing people in Florida, particularly Governor DeSantis and the people of Duval County, Florida, saying they want to ban books. Well, let me just say this. I hope they're successful in banning a number of books. The question is, which are those books? Are those books, for example, Genderqueer, a memoir, that book, or This Book is Gay? In that book, there are all sorts of depictions with body parts and male body parts. I can't even put on the screen the stuff that is in this book, Genderqueer, where there's two men engaged in a sexual position. Another page where I can flip to where there's two men engaged in oral sex. Another picture here in which there are any number of ridiculous graphic pictures that are being put in front of our kids in schools. Now, my question for this entire panel is, do you believe that parents have a right to know whether this stuff is in their schools, in the libraries, or being pushed or promoted by teachers in their schools? I would like a yes or no answer from each member of the panel. Start with you, Ms. Neely, and work down.
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes, parents have a right to know.
Parents have a right to know. Well, that's good to know. I would like to submit these for the record without objection to the chairman. I would also like to submit for the record an article called Facts About Library Books in the Duval County Public Schools, which makes very clear that there are no books being banned about Rosa Parks or Roberto Clemente, that in fact there was a process for reviewing the books, that these books have been put on the shelves, left on the shelves. There are 13 books about Rosa Parks on average in every elementary school in Duval County. Our colleagues on the other side of the aisle are lying about it. The facts are here, and I'll submit this to the record, and I yield back.
Very good. Without objection. Thank you, gentlemen. The chair now recognizes gentleman from California, Mr. Kylie. 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for organizing this hearing on such an important topic, which the committee has very carefully laid out what happened. We had the powers of the federal government, counterterrorism powers, criminal powers, law enforcement powers, mobilized for the purpose of restricting and chilling the most core protected form of speech, that is the right to petition your government and to try to seek changes. And on the most important of topics, the education of one's children. And I had hoped this would have been a bipartisan effort towards accountability. After all, the National School Board Association, which laid out the predicate for this whole thing with its letter, has apologized for it. Yet instead of a bipartisan inquiry into what happened here and what reforms we can make, the other side of the dais has engaged in an exercise of whataboutism, saying, well, we're not going to even address this, but what about this whole other issue? And as we've learned in the course of this discussion, this other issue is really a red herring. So, Ms. Johnson, language really matters, and you throw around terms like book bans and censorship and gag orders. So I guess I'll just ask you, what in your view is the difference between banning books and selecting age-appropriate materials for classrooms?
Thank you for the question. What we're seeing now in terms of banning books, I'll back up a minute. PEN America defines a book ban as the removal of material that had been previously available for students, whether that material is being removed as a permanent matter or for a review that sometimes turns into a long form review and ultimately ends in, or it results in, the access to the book being removed. When we're talking about a book ban, what is happening is the government, the heavy hand of government coming in and saying that this book may no longer be accessed by children. Age appropriateness is a different matter. When we're talking about age appropriateness, there are actually a number of frameworks that exist for this. There's a Lexile framework that talks about what books should be, how books should be categorized and what ages. There are publishers who talk about this book is for young adults, this book is for
Sure.
children.
So let's just take an example. You said earlier that you think Mein Kampf should be available in classrooms.
What I said is that Mein Kampf, the Communist Manifesto, and other such books are available in public and school libraries and should be so that we can learn about them in
And should be. So did you mean for high school or elementary school?
That is not for me to say, sir. I am not an expert in terms of the age appropriate.
That's fair. And so if Mein Kampf were not, or were in elementary school and they decided we're not going to have it there anymore, would that be a book ban?
If it had been in an elementary school and was removed and placed in a high school, that's a good question. I think, look, it depends on the actual situation, and you're talking to someone who's gonna.
You're right.
I know,
It
but you
does
know, I mean, look,
depend-
I'm not trying to.
It does depend on the
It
situation.
depends on the situation.
So clearly you agree that there are some books that shouldn't be available to some grade levels.
I think that from my perspective as a parent, there are some books that I would not want my children to read. You might have a different perspective than I do. You might say those books are fine for parents.
That's
and I
right.
completely respect that. What my concern is, sir, is that if it was my decision and I say, I want you to ban all these books and the school board says, great, because she said so. That's what I don't want to happen, because it is not up to me. It is not up to me as one parent to dictate.
That's right. And you have school boards who are making these decisions with input from the community. And so I just want you to be careful about the language that you use, because you as well think it's appropriate to limit access to certain types of materials in classrooms. You just go ahead and say that anyone who disagrees with you on the particular limitations that are put in place is guilty of banning books or violating the First Amendment, when that just isn't the case. Now, on a related topic, are you aware that right now schools are shut down in the Los Angeles Unified School District?
I am aware of that. Yes.
Because of yet another school shutdown and strike? And are you aware that in that school district, kids were out of class for up to a year and a half
I was not aware of. I mean, you mean during COVID?
during COVID? And in many districts across the country, of course, schools were
Of
shut
course,
down
yeah.
for extended periods. How many books did kids have access to inside of classrooms, inside of school libraries, in those schools when they were shut down?
That I don't know if there were ways to bring, if there were some students who had access to books that they were brought to them. That I can't tell you. But
Certainly
there's a
not very
difference,
many, I
sir.
would think. Is that
But
right?
I'm sorry.
Certainly not very many books were available. Is that right?
Ostensibly, that would be correct. But there's a difference here between.
Okay, I'm sorry on time. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I just want to say, as you might be aware, Ms. Justice and parents like her tried to get schools open, and we know at this point it was a catastrophic mistake to keep them closed, and that enabled students to have access to all the books that were there. You've been fighting. Your whole testimony has been getting them access to a few more books. She got them access. They fought to get students access to all the books. So would you like to take the opportunity to thank Ms. Justice and the other parent leaders for their efforts?
I also know that Ms. Justice was a member of a school board, which I really appreciate, but I think the public service is incredibly important. Look, what we're
Okay,
talking.
wait, hold on. Gentleman's time's expired. I've got to move on. Chair recognizes gentlelady from Texas, Ms. Escobar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This has been a surreal hearing, a surreal experience. I am so fortunate. I'm the mother of 2 children. They're adults now, 26 years old. My son is 26 years old. He's in law school. My daughter's 24, and she's working on her license to be a social worker. I am so proud of them, so proud of the role that their father, my husband, and I played in their education. And our goal always was to ensure that our kids had a robust education, that there were great debates that they participated in so that they could be part of a country that honors and uplifts important debates and discussions. I wanted them to be prepared as possible for the workforce. And I am so grateful that they are not young people in school today. And when I talk to constituents of mine who are parents with school-age children, who share with me what their number one concern is, their number one concern is that their kids will not come home because we are a country awash in guns, and that their kids have to go through horrific drills that mimic school shootings. That is the real crisis in our schools today. That is the real crisis for young people in America. And instead of talking about that and confronting that crisis and talking about how we can create places that are safe for kids so that they can survive yet another day without fear of gun violence, this is what we're talking about. There's not been any evidence whatsoever of anyone being arrested or prosecuted. And instead, now we have this extremist agenda that seeks to create the most limiting experience possible for children by limiting their access to important books about slavery, about the Holocaust, about aspects of human history that are important for us to learn from. Ms. Johnson, can you talk a little bit about the real chilling effect that laws such as the educational gag order can have on parents, students, and teachers?
Yes, thank you for the question. What we are seeing with these laws is, as you know, it's essentially a threefold issue. The first is that educators now do not know what they are permitted to say based on what a...
Okay, so I'm writing this other part of this thing as I'm going here, but when you say that teachers don't know what they can or can't say, it's very simple. If you're teaching math, you teach math. If you are teaching English, you teach English. If you are teaching history, you teach history. You do not go into a room with kids and start trying to explain gay lifestyles, anal sex. You don't put a book in front of children, 8th graders, 6th graders, that has depictions of men blowing each other. You don't walk into a classroom with these kids in drag, wearing giant fake boobs. See, what people in the school system fail to understand is, and it fucking sucks, man. I so wish I could homeschool my daughter and my son. When it comes to topics like homosexuality or transgenderism or anything like that, how about you just don't get into those topics with very young, impressionable children? That is the parents' job to explain topics like that with their children, because they are their children. If I walked into a classroom that my child was in and I saw gay pride flags and Black Lives Matter and a lot of other things like that hanging on the wall, I would snatch my child out of that classroom, that school, in a hurry. What's up, Uke? Why are these people in such a hurry to bring these topics up with very young children? See, I'm banned off of Twitter. I caught a Twitter ban because I dared question the wisdom of parents that would bring their very young children to drag shows. Now, I have been to a drag show. My ex-girlfriend knew some, which long story, but my ex-girlfriend, when me and her were together, she knew some people that were gay. I ain't got no problems with it. And they asked me one night, hey, you want to go to this drag show? I said, fucking, I'll roll it out. It ain't going to hurt my damn feelings. It ain't going to make me fucking gay. A drag show in an adult club is fine. Fuck it. You do you, boo-boo. I ain't got a problem with it. What I do have an issue with it is when you're bringing that to very young children. I mean, down to fucking toddlers. These people want to do this shit in front of them. People would lose their shit if I took my 3-year-old son and went to the strip club with him. which would be fucking cool because that would be better than bringing a puppy. You realize how much attention that boy gets? It's amazing to me, and I've said it, oh God, so many times it's not even funny. We really fucked up when we allowed the leftists to take over the education system. And that started to happen probably pretty hard in the 50s, believe it or not. That's how you got the hippies in the 60s. And then that turned into that whole mutated thing. And these people that were educated that way became educators themselves. And they became more radical than the people that educated them. It's funny because shit, 20 years ago, I know for a fact I had conversations with people that, didn't think the gay pride parade or something was all that bad. And a lot of the things they were teaching about, gay, homosexual, what the fuck ever. I got no problems if you're adult and you do you. But see, all of that has gone to the point to where they are trying to make pedophilia a sexual orientation. There's that one part, I'd have to look it up. Someone went through all the colors on the new pride flag, and what some of those colors were for. Man, fuck me, man. It's so crazy. And we've lost our minds so far that we will take a man who was a rapist, let him identify as a woman, and then put him in a female prison. That shit actually fucking happened. And then the women in the prison start getting pregnant. Now, granted, if I went back to prison, I would definitely want to be in a woman's prison. But damn. It's just the sheer insanity of where we're at.
What a political official has told them they can or cannot say.
Why my dumbass is sitting here writing
Second
letters
is that there
to
are
Congress
now
people.
parents who are having less and less of being able to have input into what's happening in the schools. And as mentioned before, we do believe that parents have an essential role to play alongside teachers, alongside other educators in what happens in schools. And the third is that the students are not getting information. The entire point here is that we are talking about access. We want students to have access to information. As I've noted previously, the Supreme Court has held long ago that the First Amendment rights do not stop at the schoolhouse gate. That also extends to students, and it extends to the receipt of information. When we are not allowing students to have access to information, when we are not teaching them about the very basics of our history, we are doing them a disservice. And I completely understand. We might have disagreements in this room. We might agree, maybe be surprised, but with whom we agree about what actually should take place, what actually should be taught in the classroom, to what age, in what manner. I completely get that. But what we don't want to see is a legislative ban saying it must be silenced. What we need to be doing is talking about it. Let's converse, let's discuss, let's debate, let's figure out what's
our
best.
school systems in the United States cannot
Thank you
keep
so much,
up with
Ms.
other
Johnson.
countries.
One last thing that I'd like to say, I've had the privilege of meeting with many teachers in my district, and teachers have a really tough job. They have to balance a lot of needs that the kids have. And the last thing that we should be doing with professionals who we are lucky to have in the workplace, like the great teachers that teach across this nation, is inserting politics. into
Yep, Taco, you got
into
that
their
right.
job. So it is my hope that this committee can, and the subcommittee can get back to focusing on real issues that American families face, so that we can create the best kind of environment for our kids so that they
Poor
can
Corn
then go
Pop.
on and become
He's a
as
bad dude.
competitive and brilliant as they can be as part of our workforce future. Thank you so much. I yield back.
Thank you. The gentlelady yields back. The chair recognizes the chairman of the full committee, Mr. Jordan, for 5 minutes.
I thank the chairman. Ms. Johnson, in your written remarks, you said that the Penn Center has a steadfast devotion to free expression. In fact, I counted 16 times in your written testimony you used the terms free expression or free speech. I just want to know, 2 weeks ago when Senator Schumer stood on the Senate floor and said to a major American news outlet that they should not play video footage from January 6th, was that something that's consistent with a steadfast devotion to free expression?
I'm sorry, sir, when Senator Schumer,
Told Fox News, don't play video footage from January 6th. Was that a commitment to steadfast devotion to free expression?
I think Senator, I cannot speak for Senator Schumer or what
I'm not asking you to speak for him. I'm asking you to comment on what he said.
If there is an issue of national security, sir, I'm not going to comment on what.
How about the very next day when this committee released a report where the Federal Trade Commission sent a letter to a private company, Twitter, and asked them, who are the journalists you're talking with, and named 4 journalists by name? Would that be consistent with a steadfast devotion to free expression?
Sir, PEN America consistently works to defend the rights of journalists, including their ability to do their job. But that's all I will say about that.
The next day, 2 of those 4 journalists mentioned in the FTC's letter to Twitter testified in front of this committee, and Democrat members of Congress asked those 2 journalists who their sources were. Is that consistent with a steadfast devotion to free expression?
Sir, PEN America consistently works to ensure that journalists can do their job, and that means allowing for anonymous sources as appropriate.
Good for you. How about this? 2 days into the Biden administration, literally 2 days, January 23rd, 2021, Clark Humphrey, Executive Office of the Presidency, White House office, sends an email to Twitter where he says this: wanted to flag the below tweet, and I'm wondering if we can get moving on the process for having it removed ASAP. Would that be consistent with a steadfast devotion to free expression?
Sir, I don't know the content of the tweet, so I can't speak to that.
I'll give you the content. They cited a tweet from Robert F. Kennedy, that conservative Republican, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., where he was raising some concerns about vaccines. And the White House, 2 days into this administration, said they wanted that tweet taken down. Would that be consistent with free expression?
I will say 2 things about that. One is that, not having seen this, and I appreciate you reading it to me. One is that we would like to err on the side of permitting content because I think it's important to have content.
I'm with you. I'm
right?
with you. That's
And
why
I think the other, sir, is that we would also want to ensure that if there is misinformation or disinformation being promulgated, that we're able to address it. And
Well, that's when it gets scary. That's when it gets real scary. I'm surprised you said that after mentioning free expression 16 times in your written statement, that suddenly now, unless it's misinformation as defined by you, that is entirely contrary to what the First Amendment's about. How about this? National School Boards Association letter that was the catalyst for most of this, frankly, all of this, I think, was sent on September 29, 2021. I just want to read the first sentence. America's public schools and education leaders are under immediate threat. The letter then goes on to say, the NSBA requests a joint expedited review by the Department of Justice. Such review should examine the use of the Patriot Acts in regard to domestic terrorism. Do you agree with the NSBA letter sent on September 29, 2021?
Sir, we are not, PEN America has not made a position on that letter. I will just say, I understand.
No, I'm just asking, well, how about those 2 sentences I just read? Do you agree with the tone of that in that letter? Do you agree with that?
I'll say this, it is really important that any member of a community is able to stand up before a school board and voice their opinion. It is equally important that a school board member is able to carry out this critical, important public service, sir, in a way that keeps our safety. That's really what I
Well,
always.
you know who disagrees with it?
Who disagrees with me, sir?
All kinds of people, but the most important, I think, entity who disagrees with it is the School Boards Association themselves, because 23 days later, they rescinded it. 23 days later, they said this: we regret and apologize for the letter. There was no justification for the language included in the letter. So, I mean, the idea that the Attorney General still continues to defend his memorandum based solely on this, as Ms. Neely pointed out in her opening statement, I find alarming. And to our three witnesses, Ms. Justice, Mr. Langford, and Ms. Neely, thank you so much for what you did. To your point earlier, Ms. Neely, we are going to talk to these people. We talked to Ms. Garcia today. We had a transcribed interview with her. Mr. Slavin's coming in next week. We're trying to talk with Ms. Wall and a host of other folks who concocted this whole thing, as our report that we released 2 days ago points out, concocted this whole thing. And the key line in that report, not from Republicans, not from Mr. Johnson, not from Republicans on the committee, but from a U.S. attorney, Democrat U.S. attorney in the Biden administration, when he said this appeared to be a manufactured crisis. It was all put together for politics. And that's what we all know. With that, I yield back.
Thank the gentleman. The chair recognizes the gentlelady from Texas, Ms. Jackson Lee, for 5 minutes.
When I think of education, thank the gentleman for yielding, I think of children. And I just left the floor in the midst of the discussion of legislation HR 5 that is labeled Parental Bill of Rights. And even in that debate, I refused to engage in who was more for parents than who was not for parents, who had the upper hand, friends on the other side of the aisle or Democrats. I did speak for myself and what I believe is the view of Democrats who happen to be parents as well, that the rights of parents are paramount, but the rights of children and teachers and even support staff, all who contribute to the education of our number one priority, our precious priority, and that is our children. And so I think as I look at this particular hearing, back of my mind, I'm wondering, what cause are we here for? Are we trying to enhance a greater opportunity for our children to be educated, to be safe and secure? When I think of where we are in this hearing, I would wonder whether or not the vast majority of everyday Americans would think that they could not be heard. Their parents could not be heard before school boards. And we know that they have the right to debate vigorously all aspects of any disagreement that they may have with the school board. I'm not sure why the letter that was sent was then withdrawn. May have been some form of intimidation. Who knows? But it is hypocritical to complain about the federal government chilling parents' free speech while cheering on book bans. If the majority is truly concerned with protecting free expression, then it should focus on the efforts of some Republican state legislators to ban books. I was just on the floor with a book about Professor DeGrasse. That book, he is an astrologist, banned book. Looks like a lovely book to me with pictures. A story about Nelson Mandela that brought together South Africa peacefully after a tumultuous civil war. Banned book. Diversity, equity, and the inclusivity, banned by the governor of the state of Texas. We should all be free to speak with free expression. But at the same time as we do so, I think we have to recognize, again, the importance of being fair and balanced. Ban books, intimidating language, which I think is important to note. The Supreme Court, for example, though we do have a question of what is obscenity as relates to a Supreme Court justice, but obscenity, defamation, fraud, incitement, true threats, speech integral to criminal conduct and child pornography.
Okay. Let me explain to this woman why child pornography is considered obscenity. Because child pornography is wrongfully depriving a child of life and liberty. Therefore, it is illegal. Also, putting pornography in front of children really and truly deprives them of a amount of innocence that they have. So you are wrongfully depriving them of a liberty. So you can't make child porn, real child porn, without harming a child. That's why we make shit like that illegal. Even illegal to have, because you're pretty much funding the destruction of a child and a child's innocence. And anytime these fuckers reach up and they're talking about, oh, they're banning books and all this shit, they're full of fucking shit. These are the assholes who don't want the Bible in a school library. But they want books about two men blowing each other or a young kid having a homosexual experience. These people are full of shit. And whatever that fucking thing is that lives on her back of her head must have sucked her fucking brain out.
So white supremacy bias may result in someone's death. Should that not be questioned? Not eliminated, but if it results in someone's death or assault, it is destructive. So, Ms. Johnson, in acknowledging the other witnesses, and I appreciate your presence here today.
Oh, God, this lady.
I do want to hear your answer that you have probably repeated before. This is in the backdrop of board members being viciously attacked by words by very angry parents in the midst of the pandemic. Most of that was there. How do you frame the value of free speech juxtaposed against the safety of individuals who are in responsible positions who likewise have rights?
Thank you for the question. I think it's important to have both. I think that we can achieve a safe environment, a safe public forum in which public servants such as school board members and others can receive commentary, feedback, information, and share it as well. And also have a situation in which community members from parents, teachers, and others in the community can also engage. And I want to be really clear here that parents are free, other community members broadly are free under the First Amendment to criticize their schools, their administrators,
No person
and
shall be
governments.
punished
That's part of what makes America
by the
America.
virtue of
And they can
the
do so
law
even in offensive and
established and
vitriolic ways, but
promulgated
there is a
prior
limit,
to
as we
the
know,
offense.
and that is when we are talking about incitement or a true threat. So I do believe that we can have both, and we should have both. I think it's critically important that we do.
Gentlelady's time's expired. Chair, thank you. The chair recognizes the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Bishop.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Johnson, I'm interested in pursuing that a little bit. You know, the chairman titled this hearing, "Free Speech, the Biden Administration's Chilling of Parents' Fundamental Rights." And of course, they're talking about the Attorney General's memo. Folks on the other side of the aisle have been interested in talking about what you describe as book bans and educational gag orders. I just wonder, and of course, you're free to put anything you want to in your testimony, but did you consider that the subject, the Attorney General's memo? Well, let me ask you this way: did PEN America condemn the Attorney General's memo?
We did not put out a statement during the time of the memo, no, sir.
So, and you've said, you know, you were very carefully, and you're a lawyer, a First Amendment lawyer, and you know this stuff. You laid out earlier what the First Amendment doesn't protect. If there's actual and incitement of imminent violence.
Yes, sir.
And so does it is it a matter of concern to you whether the Attorney General of the United States, the highest law enforcement officer, issued a memorandum for action in every judicial district in the country concerning activism relating to school boards? I mean, it matters a great deal, doesn't it? Whether there was a sufficient factual predicate of actual threats or incitement of violence, as opposed to that even rambunctious advocacy that you made reference to.
I think it's critically important that people have a right to speak out, and I do believe that. We would oppose efforts to restrict protected speech, absolutely.
So why do you deem that subject unworthy of comment?
I can't speak to what.
Did you engage in a wide gamut of free expression issues, is what your testimony says. That's what you do. And here the highest law enforcement officer in the country did something that can only be described as chilling. And what it appeared to me when I went through every footnote in that NSAB letter that the Attorney General relied upon, I couldn't find. There were like maybe 2 across the country acts involving busting a door in one case. I didn't find, and a lot of these responses coming back from United States attorneys and all these meetings that they summoned said there weren't any. Then the local officers, when they got in touch with them, said, you guys are doing something you have no business doing. Is that not a matter of concern to you as an advocate for free expression?
I appreciate the question, sir, and I'm happy to go back and look at it. I cannot tell you at this moment why.
So it did, for whatever reason, it didn't arise to a level of significance for you. Not enough to talk about in your testimony anyway, right?
No, sir, I wouldn't put it that way. I would put it in the way that we are really focused on ensuring that people do have the right to access, and we have been focused, as you know, and as my testimony reflects, about this wave of censorship that's happening at the state and local level. It does not mean we don't care, sir.
All right.
But
How
I
about
appreciate
this
the question.
Have you read the Twitter files?
I'm sorry?
Have you read the Twitter files? Not familiar with that? You know about Matt Taibbi and Michael Schellenberger and the others?
Okay, I'm sorry.
They've issued 19, they describe the use of the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, the Cyber Infrastructure and Security Agency, the Global Engagement Center at the State Department, the ODNI, the CIA, to act directly with social media platforms and through private so-called disinformation researchers. I noticed on PEN America's website, you guys talk a lot about reacting to disinformation. On the pretext of reacting to disinformation, they got with social media companies, they took down millions of social media posts. And then they used things like Hamilton 68 that purported to tie them to Russia. It was all BS. Is that not a matter of concern to you?
Sir, I can go back and take a look at what we've actually done.
I mean, that's extraordinary. That's what I'm saying. So, and I think what's interesting in this, where we are in this, the subcommittee on weaponization, which is not this committee, is that you took pains to say that your organization, it doesn't care about which side of the aisle it's on, that the free expression ought to be of concern to everybody. We're talking about, as one witness called it, the largest censorship exercise in the history of the United States government. And that wasn't the subject that you chose to talk about either. Are you a partisan, or are you just interested in free expression on, across the political spectrum?
So we are a nonpartisan organization, and we have engaged in a lot of defense of people from both sides of the aisle, from our campus free speech to looking at protest rights. We are definitely engaged on this from a nonpartisan perspective. I do appreciate the question. I'm more than happy to take a look and respond for the record. But at this point, I just don't have the response on those particular, on the Twitter files right now.
I hope we can all get together, because I think they're really important issues, and they don't matter what your party is. And I hope we'll cover a lot of ground on those subjects. Mr. Chairman, my time's expired.
Thank you. Chair recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. McClintock, for 5 minutes.
And I agree with Mr. Bishop. I think we're arguing past each other on a lot of the points that have been made today. And this hearing specifically calls into question the use of government authority to intimidate parents who petition their elected school boards. Now, surely the Democrats are not arguing in favor of this practice. I think what they're questioning is whether this is actually happening. And yet we're hearing not only from parents who are on the receiving end of this practice, but also whistleblowers within the FBI who are telling us this is exactly what is happening. The ranking member assures us, well, it's no problem. Nobody's actually been prosecuted, let alone convicted. Well, wait a second. If no one's been prosecuted, That tells me that the allegations of inciting violence are completely false. Not a single allegation is true. The insidious thing about the ranking member's comment is that intimidation doesn't require prosecution, only the threat of it. How terrifying to come to your local school board meeting, strongly express your opinions over matters that fundamentally affect the upbringing of your kids, only to get a call from the FBI the next day asking about everything you said, your political and religious views, and whether you own a gun. These facts speak for themselves. Every person, regardless of their political viewpoint, can understand how intimidating and terrifying and chilling such an experience could be. Now, I know Tea Party activists who were singled out for intimidation by the IRS under the Obama administration years ago, who still won't go near politics out of fear. If the Democrats are actually defending such a practice, then they have completely removed themselves from the fundamental principles of a free society that define Americans as a people. I can't believe that's true of any but a lunatic fringe in their party. Now, the Democrats shift to a question's more complex elements, and that's who has the right to direct the education of their children. Well, I think that should be pretty clear. Parents have that right and responsibility to determine how their children are raised and what ideas they're exposed to and what ideas they're not exposed to. The conflict arises when parents in the school system have different views on that subject. A Marxist family may want their children schooled in their viewpoints. A conservative family may want something very different. Full school choice, of course, would resolve that conflict completely. But when parents don't have that choice, their wishes have to be expressed through an elected school board. A liberal enclave may have different views on curriculum than a conservative one. That's why we have local school boards and why we ought to hold sacred the right of parents to petition those school boards. I thought Ms. Johnson put it beautifully in response to Mr. Kiley. She says, quote, "As a parent, there are some books I would not want my children to read." Well, parent to parent, I'll defend your right to make that decision for your children and hope that you would defend my right to make it for mine. That's not book banning. That's just raising our kids according to our own best lights. Now, once those children reach the age of majority, well, then that's a whole different matter. Then the right of parents to control their child's upbringing passes to their offspring. Institutions of higher education have the right to choose what to include, what not to include in their curricula, and college students can choose among them. Let me just pause right there. Is there any disagreement across the spectrum on these principles? Well, good. Then I think we've reached agreement on everything except maybe a few members in the minority. I think censorship over any ideas that grown-ups choose to pursue and express are antithetical to a free society. At that point, Jefferson's maxim takes hold that I've sworn eternal hostility to every form of tyranny over the mind of man. And I think that all of the panelists here would agree with that. I've got two grown children. They're very independent, very different in their viewpoints, and I'm very proud of both of them. And I want them to live in a country where they feel entirely free to express their views without censorship or fear of official retribution or a knock on the door from the FBI because they expressed a viewpoint that upset some elected potentate, and without anyone telling them what they can or cannot read or think or speak. So if we're all in agreement on that, Mr. Chairman, I think this was a successful hearing.
Thank you. The gentleman from Yielding Back, the chair recognizes myself for 5 minutes. I am playing cleanup here, and let me address a couple of things. First, in response to the question and answer provided earlier, the NSBA letter, the National School Board Association letter dated September 29, 2021, does indeed specifically equate the actions of concerned parents at school board meetings with domestic terrorism. Here's the quote from page 2 of that letter. "These actions could be the equivalent to a form of domestic terrorism and hate crimes," unquote. I'm going to read you one other excerpt, and this is also from page 2 of another document. This has been entered into the record. This is the interim staff report, Committee on the Judiciary, on a manufactured issue and misapplied priorities. Subpoenaed documents show no legitimate basis for the Attorney General's anti-parent memo. The excerpt I'm about to read you, I think, explains the why, because a lot of people have wondered why. Why would the Biden administration and the Department of Justice act when it did on that infamous now school board memo? Quote, page 2. "The documents received pursuant to this committee's subpoena show the absence of a legitimate nationwide basis for the Attorney General's directive to insert federal law enforcement into local school board matters. The documents also shed light onto how the administration worked with education special interests to generate the predicate for the Attorney General's directive. It appears from these documents and the information received that the administration's actions were a political offensive meant to quell swelling discord over controversial education curricula and unpopular school board decisions. The Attorney General's directive, here it is, came just weeks before a pivotal gubernatorial election in Virginia, in which education policies were hotly debated and a local school board's actions were under intense scrutiny. The inference from the initial tranche of subpoenaed documents is that the Justice Department's actions were a reaction to these political circumstances rather than a legitimate law enforcement response to any serious nationwide threat. The administration's goal seems to have been silencing the critics of its radical education policies and neutralizing an issue that was threatening Democrat Party prospects in the close gubernatorial race in Virginia. This weaponization of law enforcement powers against American parents exercising their First Amendment rights is dangerous. The Justice Department subjected moms and dads to the opening of an FBI investigation about them, the establishment of an FBI case file that includes their political views, and the application of a threat tag to their names as a direct result of their exercise of their fundamental.
Yeah, these parents, the federal government was actually using the Patriot Act to spy on these parents. I believe that's also how they got a lot of their information on some of the Jan 6 people. Patriot Act. The shit's so fucking insane, it's not even funny. Now, Trump, fuck him for some of his shit. He actually wanted to put reporters in jail. However, even though he just wanted to, look back at freaking Obama. Obama actually put journalists in jail and spied on journalists. Well, I mean, the sad part is, Corn Pop, I mean, there are threats to our children out there, and we need to try to do our best to be aware of them. Hey, I don't let my child just go over to anybody's house. That shit just ain't happening. Yeah, don't drink the brown water and don't eat the brown acid.
Constitutional right to speak and advocate for their children, unquote. I've got 2.5 minutes left. I want to ask each of our gracious witnesses, Mrs. Neely, Mr. Langhofer, Ms. Justice, I'd ask each of you to answer quickly one or both of these questions. One, what would you like to say to those who don't see parental rights as something that needs to be fought for? Or two, what do you think are the next big challenges your groups and all of us may face in the battle to protect parental rights? Ms. Neely, I'll start with you.
The chilling of parental rights is absolutely clear. Mr. Langhofer and I used to sue over campus free speech issues, and what we found through bias response teams is that it wasn't just the prosecution of one student. It was telling one student, getting one student in trouble for something that they may have said, often constitutionally protected speech, that then sent a message to every single other student on campus, or in this case, K-12 schools, who holds the same opinion. You say that thing out loud, we'll come for you too. There is a reason there are not as many protests on college campuses these days, because students are not inviting controversial speakers whatsoever. We saw what happened to Judge Duncan 2 weeks ago at Stanford Law. I doubt that there will be very many Fifth Circuit judges invited to speak at law schools in the future, and that will be to the detriment of America's children.
I interviewed Judge Duncan, my former colleague, on my podcast, and he had a lot to say about that. Mr. Langhofer.
I think the most important threat to parental rights is the belief that government officials think that they know better about raising these children than their parents. I've had hearings where school officials indicate that they think that they have the right and the knowledge to make important decisions about the transition of these young children without telling the parents, without having any kind of medical diagnosis, without having any kind of medical intervention, and then indicating that they're doing this across the board. There's no threat of any kind of parental problems here. And so this notion that government officials know better than parents is the biggest threat to the parental rights. And it's something that every citizen, no matter your political beliefs, should absolutely be concerned about.
Well said. Ms. Justice?
I want to be clear that there are private conversations happening between teachers and counselors and children behind the backs of parents without their consent or knowledge. I think that's one of the most dangerous things that's happening right now. The Department of Justice and the FBI made a fatal mistake when they decided to go against parents.
We just need to
try divide
completely do
parents and their
away
children.
with the
There
federal
is no
Department
power
of Education.
that
It
supersedes
needs to
the
be
love
fucking
of a parent for their
scrapped.
child, and we will not be pushed out of the way in decisions about our children's education or their future.
Very well said. Okay, I've got a couple unanimous consent requests.
Yeah, thank you. Since we are discussing the memo, the Attorney General's October 4th, 2021 memo, which does not mention parents, domestic terrorists, or the Patriot Act, thought it was important that we put that in the record, particularly the part that says it's focused not on protected speech, but threats.
Without objection.
And I also wanted to.
Yeah, but the government
unanimous
gets to
consent
decide what is a
introduce PolitiFact
threat.
article entitled FBI DOJ tagged threats against school officials, not parents, for attending school board meetings.
And see, a lot of
Without
those
objection.
threats
I've got a
were,
couple of myself.
we are
see,
going
Ms.
to vote you
Justice,
off of
you
the
have
school
some
board.
letters that
or
I wanted to enter into the record. Can you just
we
say
will
briefly for
take
the
the
record
school
what that
board
is in
over.
your
I mean,
folder?
there was.
Yes, sir. Representative Jackson Lee said at an education committee meeting recently that we couldn't bring 100 parents here to say they were dissatisfied with the education their children are receiving in public schools. This is a couple hundred
What the
letters
flying
that have been
fuck was that?
handwritten by members that I've brought, and we will make very good use of the impact statement form that the Ed Committee has set up for us to give input.
Thank you for doing that. Without objection, we enter that into the record and also enter into the record for Mr. Langhofer and my own benefit. This is an article from Bloomberg dated September 7,
See if I can
2017,
find
entitled
one.
Southern Poverty Law Center Gets Creative to Label, quote, hate groups, subtitled Principled Conservatives Are Lumped Together with Bigots. And here's an excerpt. Unfortunately, it also has an incentive to apply their term broadly. When people see that the PLC lists over 900 hate groups, 900, this seems like good reason to panic and maybe write a check to the SPLC. This concludes today's hearing. We want to thank our witnesses for appearing before the committee today. I also want to thank the ranking member, Ms. Scanlon, and congratulate her formally for her appointment to this position and for making history as the first woman.
Yeah. Making history as the first woman, blah, 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 blah. Let me see if I can find this. Oh, hell. Well, let's see. Let's look at this one real quick while I'm trying to find something else.
Evening. So I'm Jay McDonald. I'm here to talk about diversity, inclusion, and equity. So we hear so much about diversity, inclusion, and equity and how it's one of the main thrusts, main objectives of the school board and the school district. We don't often see specific examples of what diversity, inclusion, and equity looks like, though. So today I brought an excellent representation. This is like the archetype of diversity, inclusion, and equity material that it's one of the books that was just recently purchased for our libraries. It's in Romig and Bartlett. It's called Let's Talk About It by Erica Moen. So it's got one of the chapters in here is about sexting. And I'll just read some of the text here. So before you start sending your naughty masterpieces around the world, take some time to get friendly with photo editing software and apps. Digital photos are permanent and impossible to retract once they're out there. So keep your recognizable features out of them before you share them. This is a book for kids.
So yeah, so this freaking book is telling kids how to send explicit messages. And, you know, there's been a few times I've had to explain to younger guys, you got phones, people are sending messages back and forth. Realize when you hit 18, that girl who was sending you messages, if she is still 17 or maybe a little bit younger, your ass is in trouble for having those pictures on your phone. So you best get rid of that shit, because it's going to fuck you up.
Don't forget to crop out your face, hide your birthmarks and scars, and edit out your piercings and tattoos. And don't forget to tell your sweetie how hot they look. Let them know you appreciate the little gift they've sent you.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm going to interrupt you at this point. It sounds like you have a concern about a book. I'd be glad to connect you to the superintendent and their team to go through the appropriate process.
I'd appreciate if you don't interrupt my time.
Mr. McDonald, I've asked you to defer to the superintendent and their team if you have a concern about a book. We have a procedure and a process and a team ready to assist you if you'd like.
Mr. President, I don't think he's violated any rules. I mean, he hasn't used pornography. I mean, he hasn't shown any pornography. He hasn't shown any bad words, offensive words.
Mr. Donnelly, you can overrule the ruling of the chair if you'd like. It's my determination that we should ask Mr. McDonald to go through the appropriate process.
Well, I understand suggesting that to him, and I think that's fine, but I don't think he's said anything that would cause us to cut off his testimony at this point.
I think we have a past precedent in this boardroom which would support my ruling. You're welcome, and I support your right to appeal the ruling of the chair.
Mask mandates. It was another one. Where's it at?
Yeah, I would appeal the ruling of the chair based on that. I haven't heard anything that specifically violated our current rules for public testimony.
Understood. Okay. Is there a second? I'll second. Okay. I don't believe there's a debate, so we would go straight to a vote whether we're going to uphold the ruling of the chair. Ms. Foster, can we have a vote? A yes vote would be to uphold the ruling of the chair. A no vote would be to sustain.
Trying to find a video, man. These parents went up there and they completely
Member Higgins?
took over a school board.
Yes.
Member Donnelly?
No.
President Bellamy? President Bellamy, I think you're muted.
Sorry, yes.
Thank you. Member Holloman?
No.
Member Lessons?
Yes.
Member Wilson? Yes.
Angry
And Member
parents,
Jacobs?
Holiday, insulting parents.
By a vote of 5-2, the ruling is upheld. So, Mr. McDonald, if you have any other items to testify on, you're welcome to do so.
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, I keep getting cut off when I just read these books that are there's still purchase orders out for these books. Like they're not old things that were just put on the shelves to rot. Like they're things that you're actively procuring, putting in class. The first book that I read, I'm going to bring some of the FOIA documents that I have next time I'm in here. But there's teachers that are actually using it on their reading list in their classroom as part of their class material.
Yeah, dude, some of these teachers are showing some very fucking wild shit to kids.
So I don't want to hear that we're not giving this to kids. I was at the police department today and I was talking to them about this. And what it comes down to is there's a gray area where they say that, because you got to understand that distribution of indecent and pornographic materials to minors is a Class C felony. I hope that people understand that. So if there's the argument that, well, it's loosely covered by the First Amendment, and that's what you're doing, that's what you're hiding behind to get this to students in school, then how can you say I don't have First Amendment rights to just read this to adults at a school board meeting? Is it or is it not a First Amendment issue? I don't understand how it's appropriate for kids and it's not appropriate for the school board. I didn't even say a bad word. It feels a lot like you don't want parents to be seeing what's given to the kids. You're happy to give this to children, I've seen you, I mean, you even host reading times on the weekends. What books, what's your reading list when you host reading time on the weekends with Felix? You're happy to give these books to kids? It seems like you're terrified to give them to parents. And I think it's an absolute travesty that you cut off my time and don't even let me have my 3 minutes. I think you're breaking your own rules. Thank you.
With that, your 3 minutes are up. Thank you, Mr. McDonald. I see no other individuals signed up for testimony. Ms. Foster, is that correct? Okay. All right, thank you much. We're going to take a 10-minute at ease. Thank you.
Oh, we use this one while I'm looking for another video.
Contents of this book are inappropriate for their children, and now they're demanding reform and transparency from the school board.
Write a sex scene you wouldn't show your mom. Rewrite the sex scene from above into one that you'd let your mom read. Describe your favorite part of a man's body using only verbs.
Those are some of the writing prompts found inside this book, 642 Things to Write About. And up until Monday, that book was being used by students in Hudson's high school senior College Credit Plus writing class.
Here it is.
Do not sexualize our kids. The raw filth that snuck past the gatekeeping functions of this Board of Ed in 642 reasons was disgusting.
At a school board meeting Monday, Principal Brian Welch apologized for the book's use in the classroom.
We did not exercise due diligence when we reviewed this resource, and as a result, we overlooked several writing prompts among the 642 that are not appropriate for our high school audience.
But that didn't stop parents from grilling the board about how it slipped by the eyes of educators and administrators for years.
The students were told not to take the book home. Why? So their parents couldn't see it.
A parent found that book in their child's backpack.
Amanda Croker is the vice chair of Moms for Liberty Summit County. She says parents found out about the book for the first time Friday, and it quickly made the rounds on Facebook. And while she doesn't have a child in the district, she and other members of her group came to the meeting to support other parents who she said.
Yeah, let me show this from Corn Pop real fast because this is fucking Jesus Christ. So you got an educator born without arms or legs. Kentucky State Police began an investigation into Scott after receiving a complaint that she was having an inappropriate relationship with a student she had in class last year. During the inquiry, police investigators discovered inappropriate text messages between the student and Scott. As well as suspect had illegal physical contact with the student. Who knew? No arms, no legs, child porn. Was that the same chick that was in this hearing? Oh, damn, I did the tab. But yeah, was that the same chick that was in this hearing? Oh, yeah, this is it. Yeah, dude, he blasted up in there and was like, look, I got another clip with him because I didn't think that was one, but I got another clip from him and he blasted the shit out of him. Matter of fact, hell, we'll go ahead and play it. Freaking, why is it not? Oh, I lost the damn screen share. Hold on. Oh yeah, when I look for old girl, no arms, no legs, and shut it down. All right, I forgot. This is it. So we're going to play a little Vox right here, which is funny. I follow Vox. I subscribe to Vox because let's face it, they're going to push the liberal narrative, and I just like to know where they're going with it. So let's watch this, because I'm pretty sure, they're going to try to make this guy out to be an asshole when all he really wants is for children not to be shown pornography.
It has come to my attention that your educators are distributing essentially what is child pornography in the classroom. I've spoken to a judge this evening. She's already confirmed that. So I'm going to give you a simple choice. You either choose to resign from this Board of Education, or you will be charged. Thank you.
Yep, hold on to that. Oh, I'm going to crash in just a minute, but let's look at a few others.
Imagine if dozens of small businesses in your town funnel $299 straight into your bank.
Parents are not happy with the Rockland Charter School Academy for having transgender discussions in a kindergarten class.
Why would you discuss transgenderism in a kindergarten class?
Those discussions were earlier this summer during the last few days of the academic school year.
CBS 13's Sharon Roget joins us live from Rockland, where a school board meeting just wrapped up. Sharon.
Sam and Adrian, it was quite an emotional board meeting at Rockland Academy tonight, and it was standing room only, with parents and teachers speaking out tonight about a teacher who read books to her kindergartner class. And also during that time, that kindergartner was going through a transition in front of her peers.
Why? Why would a kindergartner be going through a transmission?
And tonight, that teacher spoke out.
And what I will share over and over again is how proud I was of my students.
An emotional Rockland Academy teacher addressing a packed house of parents, many furious about her decision to discuss the topic of gender identity inside her kindergarten class.
It was never my intent to harm any student.
You know how you discuss something like that in a kindergarten class? Simple. You don't. That's nice, Timmy. Talk to your parents about it. Fucking Christ, man.
It's only to support them through a difficult situation.
The teacher defended her actions to read 2 books she says were given to her by a transgender child going through a transition.
The kindergartners came home very confused about whether or not you can pick your gender, whether or not they really were a boy or a girl.
Parents say besides the books, the transgender student at some point during class also changed clothes and was revealed as her true gender. And many parents say they feel
as his true gender. I'll bet money.
Betrayed and blindsided.
I want her to hear from me as a parent what her gender identity means to her and to our family. Not from a book that may be controversial. My daughter went home crying, shaking, so afraid that she could turn into a boy.
The issue was not on the agenda, so parents spoke out during Monday night's public comment.
It's really about the parents being informed and involved and,
giving us the choice and the rights about, what's getting introduced to our kids and at what age.
Many teachers also speaking out in support of what transpired inside the classroom on the last days of the academic year.
Head in the direction of banned books or book lists or select.
These are I can't even say it. I can't. This wasn't going to be a share the pain stream. This was just a hangout while I write a letter stream.
The literature that should only be read inside or outside of the classroom. I think that that's a very dangerous direction to go.
Now, the district says that the books were age appropriate and fell within their literature selection policy. And unlike sex education, the topics of gender identity don't require parent prior notice. But because of tonight's comment, the district will be taking this up as an agenda item next month.
All right. Sounds like there's a lot of pressure there. Okay.
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of research through a bunch of states on policies, trying to look for, gun control stuff. Let's look at something. Let's look at Alabama. Fill context. So there's nothing looks like in Alabama for gender. Let's see. I'm looking for something real fast. So I'm searching through stuff in Alabama real quick. So I don't see anything in Alabama searching their bills. I don't see anything for gender inclusion. I'm just searching some keywords real fast. I want to see whether Alabama's got anything because I hadn't thought about it until now. Private investigation boards. Funeral. No, just searching keywords like inclusive, trans. I don't see anything in Alabama for any of this crazy shit. Hold on. Let me see. No, that's about disabled people. Discrimination, civil protections. Financial. Appropriations, child first trust, ending designated. Yeah, I don't see anything in Alabama for anything like that, but fuck me, man. I've seen enough others. Let's look at this one.
Parents are not happy with the Rockland Charter School Academy for having
We looked at that
transgender
one.
discussions.
What's this one about?
I'm the guy that went to his house, and I recommend that everybody joins me.
An ugly scene in Roseville as tempers flare and cut a board meeting short. Good evening. The controversy continues following the release of a video targeting a Loomis pastor and his LGBTQIA+ youth group. I'm Laura Painter.
And I'm Chris Thomas. Tonight, both groups showed up to speak out tonight at that meeting. And here's one thing that we do want to tell you. It did not last long. ABC 10's Alicia Machado was there. People were screaming at each other. Watch what happened.
Nope, nothing in.
A district board meeting erupting into a yelling match and ultimately coming to an abrupt end. Parents and students quickly leaving after one speaker held up what appeared to be a white power hand sign. All this happening at the Roseville Joint Union High School District Board meeting Thursday night, just days after the release of a controversial video of a Loomis pastor, Casey Tinnan, who runs an LGBTQIA+ youth group called The Landing Spot.
When they know that their queer kid is coming to me for support, they're going to be upset. It's when you are purposely misgendering them, when you are purposely not using their name. How do you handle that?
That looks like some Project Veritas video.
Call CPS.
The video released by Project Veritas. The
Yep.
group considers itself to be an undercover journalism organization. Critics call it a far-right activist group. Thursday night, dozens showing up to the district board meeting to speak out during public comment. Many expressing support for Tinnan and LGBTQIA+ students.
I'm here to ask you to practice what you preach about protecting children who already feel outcasted and rejected by all of you. It is also extremely disappointing that this district is giving a voice to a group that used deceit and defamation to push their homophobic narrative.
They made a very good man seem like a very bad man. It's complete misinformation. I know that he is doing really, really good work.
And others telling the board their concerns.
Have the proper steps been taken to fully vet these other organizations?
The solution is not putting a wedge between parents and children. Having children lie and attend secret meetings is not the answer.
This comes weeks after controversy surrounding a youth drag show fundraiser that was said to be
Youth drag show fundraiser. Youth drag show fundraiser. The more I repeat that, the more I can't even fit that into my fucking head. We've
held at
lost
Roseville High School,
our ever
but
leading-
ultimately the event was canceled after community uproar. One speaker read a statement on behalf of Pastor Tinnan.
Pastor Casey writes, I want to tell you tonight that the hate that has been directed at me and my church community this week has been immense. Proud Boys paraded outside my home with a megaphone.
Jesus Christ. And the Proud Boys boogeyman strikes again. Let's see about this one.
Are you looking for a recession-proof opportunity in the real?
A Caldwell school district board meeting ended in chaos tonight. Hundreds of Caldwell residents, including first-term Republican Senator Chris Trakel, showed up to the meeting to voice opposition to proposed Policy 3281. That proposal, which hasn't been implemented and is only in the discussion phase, includes policies that aim to affirm student gender identity and sexual orientation. Part of that proposed policy says if students want to use different school facilities based on the gender identity they most express at school, well, their parents would need to meet with school administrators.
Man, this stuff is fucking crazy. Dude, Sam, fucking dude. This world has gone absolutely insane. Dude, Mike, I don't think I saw that one. The last one I saw, oh God, I can't remember. It was freaking what was it about? I can't remember. Fuck it. You know how you affirm gender and everything in schools? Tell the child, just reach your hand down the front of your pants. If you feel a penis, you're a boy. If you don't feel a penis, you're a girl. That's the way you do this shit. So I think play some more. We'll go through a couple others. We'll probably hit about 4:30, and then I gotta go. I gotta get a little sleep before I drive my daughter to school. Chemical spill in Philadelphia on Friday. Fuck me running.
Meeting started like most others, with the board taking care of some housekeeping items, and then they opened it up to testimony on this topic, with each getting 3 minutes to speak. But things got out of hand while Senator Trakel was speaking.
Ms. Pacino, will you please listen to me?
Sir,
Yeah, you claim you want people to follow the rules, but you break the rules left and right. Last month, you allowed 2 people
all
to
right,
speak.
we will
without
recess
being
this
on the
meeting
list.
right now.
Not only did they recess, they adjourned several minutes later when you could hear the crowd kind of their disapproval of a recess.
We will recess for 15 minutes. I'm sorry, we have asked, you absolutely know the protocol.
You're not following protocol yourself.
Madam Chair, I move to adjourn. Okay, I have a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
That really goes to show you how much respect these people have. Let's see, hold on. Let's look at another one. Damn, this was 6 days ago.
With the Wells Fargo Active Cash Card, you earn 2% cash back on what you want, like first date plans and need.
No. Just my shoe.
Like maybe shoes without laces. The Wells Fargo Active Cash Card. That's real life ready.
More fallout at Bloomfield schools after a diversity assembly sparked a major controversy. Tonight, an emergency board meeting after a guest speaker shared what the district calls anti-Semitic rhetoric that made some students feel unsafe. Victor Williams is there live, and Victor, leaders are discussing how to move forward after this.
Yes, that is correct, Kimberly. And believe it or not, that meeting is still going on at this moment. But we have been told that an investigation is now being launched into this incident. But even with that, parents did not hold back from speaking their minds in this emergency meeting.
No, I am not. Do you see me standing up? Thank you.
Tensions flaring tonight in an emergency meeting held at the Bloomfield Hills Board of Education before parents and community leaders could even voice their outrage in the fact that an anti-Israeli activist was allowed to make a presentation at Bloomfield Hills High. This parent had to be escorted out after an outburst at board members and other parents in the crowd.
You know what you're all going to say. You're going to listen to that drivel and that stupid letter. That's bull. You need to be fired.
Part of the issue is that activist Huwaida Araf was allegedly invited to speak during an assembly as part of the school's diversity initiative. But it appears it's only created problems, causing widespread protests from students and even animosity in the crowd.
I'm Jewish. My kids have 1 million Muslim friends. They go to Bloomfield Hills School. Look around you. But you put them all in a position that they didn't need to be in. And that's where the problem is. It's not anywhere else.
It's believed Araf gave multiple presentations over the span of a day. Parents are now concerned about the tensions being created between Jewish.
Frustration and anger boiling over tonight at a school board meeting in New Jersey. It followed the suicide of a student in the district. The father of 14-year-old Adriana Kush says his daughter was bullied and beaten at her high school in Bayville. Video of the attack was posted on social media. She took her own life hours after the attack. Eyewitness News reporter Stefan Kim with what parents and the district are now saying.
So I'd just like to say a big yeah.
Yeah, boy, that zero tolerance for bullying things really helping, isn't it? Not this
Are we
one.
alone?
Yeah.
If you're gonna call me out, I'm gonna you up.
The unfiltered conversation caught on camera Wednesday night among the Board of Trustees with the Oakley Union Elementary School District.
They don't know what we do behind the scenes, and it's really unfortunate that they want to pick on us because they want their babysitters back. Right.
One moment got big laughs after a member spoke about parents using marijuana.
My brother had a delivery service for medical marijuana. The high clientele were parents with their kids in school.
The candid discussion that lasted several minutes abruptly cuts off when they realize they had an audience.
Oh, we have the meeting open to the public right now.
That's funny.
Someone not only tuned in, but recorded the meeting and uploaded it to YouTube. The board president, Lisa Brizendine, can be heard apologizing at the end of the meeting.
We were having a private conversation because we were really struggling at that moment with all of the board comments that were coming in because we want what's best for kids so badly.
Outraged parents quickly
I
fired
did
back,
see that one.
even starting an online petition demanding the members step down.
Yeah, the dude's wife fucking pulls out the Bible at the end.
I couldn't believe that the comments they were making.
And overnight, the parents got what they wished for when every member of the school board resigned. They issued a statement that read in part, "This was a difficult decision, but we hear the community's concerns."
That's because these fuckers, man, they don't give a rat's ass. Let's see. Let's find one more recent. Let's just play around for a sec. Let's say filters. Let's see what happens when we do this month.
It is asinine to ban CRT when it isn't even taught in any K-12 classroom in the United States of America. Your continued blatant, willful ignorance of the Black experience in this country is not only shameful, but also detrimental to the education and growth of our children.
Thank you.
Oh shit. We gotta watch this one.
I am Caesar, Julius Caesar of Rome, the emperor. I am also a female. Does anybody here believe that I am Julius Caesar? Anybody believe that? No? Of course not. It's ridiculous. I'm not Caesar. I'm not a woman either. I'm here as a father who loves his children, who loves his country. And I'm here to talk about this duty of a school board and the Department of Education. Your duty is to act in the best interest of children. It is to teach truth, not lies, facts, not fiction, biology, not a social agenda. As taxpayers, we deserve to have our children taught what we pay for, and it's not anyone's social agenda, whether it be right or left.
Stop exhausting yourself with the old axe and use the Carlton Hardware firewood drill bit to effortlessly and quickly split wood. You'll be amazed how easy wood splitting could be. Save yourself hours of exhausting labor each year with a bit that turns your drill into a wood splitting machine. Save your back and your time by working smart and efficiently. This is the perfect gift for anyone who splits wood. Our limited time 60% off sale is almost over.
What's this one?
I'm Joel Lopez in Martin County, where parents, advocates, and educators are pushing for some books to be reinstated, while others want to keep them out of Martin County schools. The topic of book bans brought out hundreds to the Martin County School Board meeting.
Well, I think it's horrible. And for parents that are saying, well, you can just take your kid to the library or buy a book yourself. Well, what about, we have over 300 kids that live in cars that go to our public schools.
The crowds of people overflowed into the lobby as they were given just 1 minute at the podium. The school board says an effort to give everyone a chance to speak.
Your mission statement reads, to educate all students for success. How are you really doing that? Or is it just those 8 schools that are in Palm City and Jensen Beach?
Let's be diverse, let's be inclusive, and let's show equity as it relates to our schools, our kids, and also our books as well.
Alicia Harriel with Faith in Florida says some of the books were about LGBTQ plus issues and race. And she says she wants more parental involvement when deciding if a book is to be removed.
My concern is that they're removing the education. Kids will not be able to know who they really are, where they come from, if they're not being educated in the school where our kids spend majority of the time.
Also in attendance, people in support of certain books being removed.
I just have an issue where I've seen in my 36 years of teaching, more and more books have shock value and graphic sexual issues.
Yeah. If you are exposing young children to graphic sexual content, that whole slap in the mouth thing comes back. Hey man, what can I say, Bacon? There's a whole lot of bullshit they're trying to like about cell phone tower. Ooh, what's this one?
Recordings just got better. Hey, it's Dana from StreamYard. I'm so excited to announce.
This is kind of off topic.
The school district here is planning a review of its safety procedures and its crisis response after a student was arrested with a gun here at Elmwood Park High School last week. Some students protested the school's response last Friday. We're told even more walked out yesterday. Police say the 17-year-old boy was arrested last Monday after reports he left the school property with a handgun in his backpack. The chief concerns here from families and staff are that the district did not order any sort of lockdown before or after the student left the building and communicated with families and staff about the incident only through email. The district says moving forward, families and staff will also receive a phone call or text message in an urgent situation.
I'm confused. If they knew the student had a gun in his backpack, how did he just leave the school?
We're told 100 or more people, from teachers and staff unions to parents and students, are planning to attend tonight's school board meeting to voice their concerns.
We just want to make sure that our students feel safe when they are in our buildings, first and foremost. We want to make sure that we have transparent communication with our community and our stakeholders, and we just want to continue moving. We're hoping that this is a catalyst for change, and we're hoping that that change is in a positive direction.
Sure, yeah, on priority, school, safe environment, yada yada. Yeah, how did dude just fucking leave the school if he had a gun on him? Rejecting Kirsten teachers.
Hi, my name is Knox Zajac. I'm 11 years old and I go to Wyndham Middle School. I'm a 6th grader. I was in the library and this book was on a stand. I'd like to read you a page. My back over my hips as I ask if we should take our clothes off. And he's saying yes before I finish my sentence. He's pulling off my t-shirt, laughing when I can't undo his shirt buttons. He's undoing my belt. I'm reaching into his bedside drawer for a condom.
This kid is how old? 11. You know what? What, did Night come in? Yeah, Night come in. What's up, dog? So anyway, guys. Yeah, I'm going to end that one here, man. I think I've got about as far on this letter as I'm going to get tonight. I still got a bunch more to do to it. And then I think I might shoot another video on the entire letter. I should, well, let's see. Nah, I'm just going to save it and I'll shoot something on it later. But yeah, it's, I can. Night, man. Have a good day at work, brother. So yeah, this shit, this shit's so fucking crazy. You got parents that are getting the fucking Patriot Act used against them because they disagree with what these school boards are doing and what teachers are teaching. Anyway, like I said, I gotta get some sleep. I gotta bring my daughter to school in a little bit. I am off this week at 10 o'clock. There's a hearing that I got to cover. I'm going to be streaming that. Let the fucking sanity begin, I guess. So anyway, end it like I always do. You personally cool. Keep that thing on you at all times. And I'm out, man. I love each and every one of you guys. You guys are all cool as fuck. But yeah, I'm out for the night. You guys be out. Be cool.